Chapter 747. Even though the person sitting on the throne was the young emperor, other than a few old officials, no one cared about him. But no matter what, the emperor was still the emperor, and the court meeting was still a court meeting. Not to mention exposing one's body. Even if one's clothes were disheveled, it was enough to be charged with disrespect. A lighter punishment would be the loss of one's reputation, and a more serious punishment would be the loss of one's head. If someone took the matter to the extreme and refused to let it go, that would be great. It might even implicate the entire family. Was Prince Changsho under a spell? Why did he suddenly ask others to expose their bodies in front of so many people? Huangsong wasn't the only one who thought this. The other officials were even more confused. Even though Wu Ma Shang had a bad temper, he wasn't such a rude person, let alone asking someone to be naked in court. Wu Ma Shang ignored Huangsong and said, "Since this person isn't willing, I can't force him. Lu Shi has a guilty conscience, so he's not willing to cooperate with me and expose his body. But don't think that you can get away with deceiving the emperor like this. Your Majesty, I have a witness who can definitely prove that Lu Shi is a deceiver and deceiver. He can't be the governor of Wanzhou. Your Majesty, please summon this person." The young emperor was at a loss. He turned to look at the Empress Dowager behind him. He had no idea what was going on. He liked to rely on his mother whenever he encountered something, and this was no exception. Separated by a thin layer of silk, he could vaguely see the Empress Dowager nodding slightly. The young emperor calmed down a little and said shyly, "If that's the case, why don't we summon a witness for questioning? What do you think, my dear officials?" "Your Majesty, the court meeting is an important place to discuss state affairs. How could just anyone step foot in there?" Huangsong frowned and said disapprovingly, "In my opinion, Chief Wuma doesn't need a witness. He just needs a bowl of soup to sober him up. One bowl was enough to make him sober up and stop babbling nonsense. How can he be so impudent and rude in such a solemn place like the court meeting?" Wu Ma Shang sneered as well. His eyes wandered between Huangsong and Jiang Pengji. He said something shocking. "I see. Chief Wang is so protective of Lu Shi because he's her little lover." As soon as he said that, not only did Huangsong burst into an uproar, but the officials were also discussing it animatedly and whispering to each other. As spectators, they felt that today's court session was exceptionally different. They had heard a lot of explosive gossip. Nowadays, men were very popular. Among the officials, there were also brothers who had a close relationship with each other. They were like best friends or a loving husband and wife. However, their relationship would not be out in the open. That was because, although it was an elegant thing to do, in the end, it still went against the rules of yin and yang. Even though it was an elegant affair, very few people would make their brotherhood known to the public. The bystanders were watching the show, but Huangsong was frightened. He said with a hint of anger, "I'm not like County Chief Wu Ma, who has no scruples. Don't slander me when it comes to men." After he finished speaking, Huangsong secretly gave Jiang Pengji a look, indicating for her to clarify as well. Otherwise, if they were caught in a bucket of sh*t, what would happen to their reputations? Thinking of the main wife in the Fu, Huangsong felt his legs go weak. If the wife found out about this rumor, Huangsong felt that once he returned home, what awaited him would be his wife's wooden club. However, no matter how Huangsong winked at her, Jiang Pengji ignored him. As the person involved, she calmly looked down and did not utter a word, as if what happened in the court session had nothing to do with her. What was even more intriguing was that Lu Shi, as the father of the person involved, had an equally cold attitude. Both of them had an attitude of "it's none of our business." Instead, Huangsong and Wu Ma Xian were the ones arguing. Wu Ma Xian snorted coldly and said, "Trying to cover up makes it even more obvious." Verbal arguments were not Huangsong's forte. If he met a scoundrel, he would only hit him when he was angry. However, if he rolled up his sleeves and hit someone in the court session, it would be a crime as serious as not dressing properly. He could only restrain himself. Wu Ma Xian, who thought he had the upper hand, looked down at Jiang Pengji with the attitude of a victor. "Your Majesty, if we let a deceiver get away with it, it will definitely cause unrest in the country and make the people uneasy. I ask for your majesty's permission to summon witnesses and expose Lu Shi's true colors. Wu Ma Shang was unwilling to let go of this point, making everyone angry and anxious. Jiang Pengji smiled coldly as she watched the drama unfold. The audience in the streaming room had already tortured Wu Ma Shang with 10 tortures. The young emperor had no opinion of his own and could only turn his head to look at his mother again. The Empress Dowager, who was listening from behind the curtains, nodded at the young emperor again. The young emperor thought about it and still agreed. Goo 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 goo, what the heck? The previous crown princess was too heartless. Not long ago, she even offered herself to the streamer, touched the streamer's hand, and wanted her to rub her breasts. Now she's turning her back on her. Anyone with eyes would know that Wu Ma Shang must have some unfavorable evidence against the streamer for making trouble at this time. The Empress Dowager should have rejected the witnesses and stalled for time. Why did she allow it? Gidge-ga-go. Puffed. Previous poster, you're too straightforward. Those who don't know better would think that the streaming room is dirty. Actually, isn't it normal for the Empress Dowager to hate the streamer? She roped in the streamer just to get the support of the streamer and her father to elevate the position of mother and son. Now that the situation has been settled, the Empress Dowager doesn't need the support of the streamer and her father anymore. Isn't it normal to dump her after using her? G. Let me add another point. The streamer didn't satisfy the desires of this old woman that day. She just watched as she was tortured by the aphrodisiac for 2 hours. If it were me, I might hold a grudge and cause trouble for the streamer or something. Jiang Pengji glanced at the bullet screen of the streaming room. The discussions were very lively. However, the reasons they mentioned were all secondary. Although the Empress Dowager was short-sighted, she wasn't stupid. She wouldn't be so stupid as to turn against Jiang Pengji over a little humiliation, unless she had already found a more reliable backer. With this layer of protection, the Empress Dowager could easily turn against her. Reality proved that Jiang Pengji's guess was correct. Wu Ma Shang had thought that the throne was in the bag, but the final result was a harsh slap to his face. However, this person was ambitious. He wasn't someone who would give up easily. The Empress Dowager had entered his hunting range. As long as he completely controlled the Empress Dowager, it would be the same as controlling the young emperor. At that time, Wu Ma Shang wouldn't be the emperor, but he would be more like the emperor. On the other hand, the Empress Dowager wanted to find a reliable partner to work with. She hoped that she would have a partner to stabilize the position of the emperor and his mother. Therefore, the two of them hit it off. The Empress Dowager needed Wu Ma Shang's real power, and Wu Ma Shang wanted to use the Empress Dowager to control the emperor. The two of them had their own plans and took what they needed. Therefore, it wasn't unreasonable for the Empress Dowager to cooperate with Wu Ma Shang to embarrass Jiang Pengji in the court. However, the level was still a little low. Jiang Pengji finally spoke. She smiled and said, "Your subject has no objections. Let's do as the county chief said and summon the witness." Chapter 748. Jiang Pengji laughed coldly and asked, "Why is the chief's expression so strange? Could the witness you speak of not exist?" After a moment, Wu Ma Shang's dull eyes regained their luster. "Don't be so arrogant. Let's see how you argue when the witness testifies. Deceiving the emperor is a capital offense. I advise you to think of a way out first." At that moment, not only was Jiang Pengji laughing coldly, but the other officials were also laughing in their hearts. When they heard that Jiang Pengji had become a governor, they were indeed a little jealous, but they did not dare to say anything. Not to mention deceiving the emperor with the Lu father and son's current power. Even if they were to enter the palace with swords, for the sake of the bigger picture, the entire court would still not dare to say anything. At most, they would just roll their eyes at them, not to mention taking Jiang Pengji's life. Wu Ma Shang's words were simply laughable. Deceiving the emperor was indeed a serious offense, but it was not worth mentioning at certain times. Everyone was waiting for a good show. They did not care that it was a court meeting. After a while, an old woman knelt at the entrance of the hall. She was dressed in linen and had a face full of hardships. Although she was an ordinary-looking old woman, she was quite calm in front of the court officials and the emperor sitting at the head of the table. The woman knelt down and greeted with an old voice. Your servant, Zhao Jia, greets the emperor. Jiang Pengji looked at the woman and could not help but laugh. Chief Wuma, is this your so-called witness? You're making me laugh. Wuma Shang pointed at Jiang Pengji and Lu Shi and asked the old woman, Are you sure this father and son pair are the masters you once served? The old woman raised her head slightly and glanced at the two. She said in a low voice, Yes, they're the old master and the eldest wife. The officials were confused. Huang Song looked like he was asking, Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? A confused expression. The old woman spoke the official language very well. She spoke clearly and enunciated every word. Everyone could understand every single word of what she said, but they couldn't understand it when it was put together. Huang Song was stunned. He regained his lost self and tried to correct the old woman's mistake. That's wrong. It is clearly the old master and the second Lang Jun, the old woman said confidently. The old woman said with certainty, That's right. Although I'm old, my memory is still good. This is clearly a pretty girl. Huang Song was silent. He thought to himself, the old woman in front of him might have a good memory, but she was definitely blind. How could a living, handsome man think of her as a pretty lady? How blind must one be to say such absurd words? After the old woman replied, she lowered her head again. Wu Ma Shang snorted proudly. Lu Zhongqing, do you dare to admit that Zhao Jia was once a servant in your residence? Lu Shi laughed and said, I'm a man. The chores in the inner courtyard have always been handled by the women in the inner courtyard. How would I know? Wu Ma Shang snorted, avoiding the important and focusing on the trivial. You have no choice but to admit it. This Zhao Jia is obviously a servant brought along by your first wife, Gu Min, in her dowry. Not long after you lost your wife, you personally released a group of servants. Do you dare to say that you don't know them? After hearing this, Lu Shi said carelessly, That was more than 10 years ago. I'm not like Chief Wuma, who can remember the affairs of other people's courtyards so clearly. If you say that this Zhao Jia was the wife servant, then that's fine. I have no objections. When the others heard this, they felt that Lu Shi's attitude was a bit strange. Others were obviously attacking Lu Shi's son, but not only did Lu Shi not defend him, he even hit him when he was down. Before they could figure it out, Jiang Pengji, the person involved, seemed to have dug a hole for herself. Father, I heard from my stepmother a long time ago that there was indeed a Zhao Jia among the old people by my mother's side. Perhaps it's her. Lu Shi glanced at the old woman and casually said, Oh. At that moment, everyone could see that this father and son pair did not take this matter to heart. They were purposely making fun of others. The old woman knelt on the ground and secretly clenched her fists. Her voice was hoarse. This servant is indeed the late wife's servant. Back then, she lost 2 sons, and her body was extremely weak. Not long after, she passed away, leaving behind the old man and the eldest wife. Wu Ma Shang asked the old woman, Are you sure that this Lu Shi in front of you is that eldest wife? The old woman nodded with certainty and said, This servant can confirm that the eldest wife's eyebrows, nose, and chin are very similar to the late wife's. Back then, the late wife especially doted on the only 4-year-old second Lang Jun, but because the servants did not take good care of him, he accidentally drowned. In order to appease the late wife's pain, the old man lied and said that the one who drowned was the eldest wife and had the eldest wife take the name of second Lang Jun. Lu Shi laughed coldly after hearing this. To me and the late wife, every child is our flesh and blood. There is no such thing as the palm of the hand or the back of the hand. Because of such a ridiculous reason, a daughter took the place of son and let a daughter live under the shadow of son. What a waste of being a father and a waste of being a mother. Wu Ma Shang immediately seized on his words and questioned, So you're saying that you deny the truth? But Lu Shi said, I'm just denying that ridiculous reason. In other words, other than the reason, Lu Shi did not refute the other facts. Admitting it so easily, Wu Ma Shang felt as if his fist had punched cotton. It was very uncomfortable. Now, it was Jiang Pengji's turn to add insult to injury. She looked at Wu Ma Shang as if he was an idiot and asked him, Chief Wuma, you mobilized so many people just for this? Wuma Shang and the old woman's expressions synchronized, as if they were both stunned. Jiang Pengji continued, Actually, we are quite grateful to Chief Wuma for this. Because even if you didn't say it, my father and I had planned to tell the truth to His Majesty and the Empress Dowager after the court session. It's just that we were the ones in the wrong and lied to them first, so we didn't know how to bring it up. Chief Wuma is very understanding and has actually helped us a lot, saving us a lot of trouble. Wuma Shang's expression froze, and the old woman also looked at a loss. After a while, Wuma Shang said, You're quite the schemer. Don't think that you can lessen the crime of lying to the emperor by saying this in hindsight. If I don't expose you, who can guarantee that you and your father will voluntarily confess after the court session and not continue to deceive the world? Jiang Pengji asked him with a troubled look. This is just a small matter, so why is Chief Wuma so persistent? If the crime of lying to the emperor is a small matter in your eyes, then what is a big matter? Wuma Shang scolded her sternly, then knelt before the young emperor and said passionately, Your Majesty, if we don't punish such a sinner, we won't be able to intimidate the others. If we don't punish this person severely, from now on, everyone will think that lying to the emperor is a small matter. What will become of your Majesty's dignity? What will become of the royal family's dignity? Jiang Pengji snorted. Her disdainful sneer was especially clear in the hall. Wuma Shang's face was ashen, and his eyes were as wide as bells. He looked at Jiang Pengji with a murderous look. Chapter 749. Go ahead and ask. I would like to see if you can distort the truth in front of everyone. If that's the case, then Chief Wuma, listen carefully. Jiang Pengji smiled nonchalantly. First question, who is Lu Shi? That's your twin brother. You took over your brother's identity. Wuma Shang spoke without hesitation. Jiang Pengji's expression was calm as she replied readily. That's wrong. I am Lu Shi, and Lu Shi is me. Who said that a twin sister can't use her deceased brother's name to comfort her parents who lost their beloved son? This is filial piety. I don't think it's wrong. Wuma Shang's eyes widened. He almost choked on her words. Seeing his expression, the other officials were happy to watch the show. The viewers in the streaming room were cheering for Jiang Pengji. Yin Rian, high energy, alert ahead. Non-combatants, retreat immediately. The streamer is about to charge for a big move. Drifting with the tide, little ding-ding. What? 120. There's a critically injured patient here. I've booked an ambulance. Gufeng EC Yuan. The streamer has charged up to 100%. I have a feeling that it's going to be a terrifying battlefield. Wu Yi Sheng. Isn't it good to be alive? Why did you have to provoke my husband? Look at him now, he's about to die. Sophistry. Wuma Shang's expression darkened. He didn't know how to retort. Jiang Pengji smiled as she asked her second question. She was even more cunning, and the officials held back their laughter. Second question. Chief Wuma, listen carefully. Do you think that those who wear men's clothes are all men, and those who wear women's clothes are all women is correct? Wuma Shang opened his mouth. He didn't know if he should answer right or wrong, because no matter how he answered, Jiang Pengji had a bunch of questions waiting for him. If he answered that it was correct, he would be lying through his teeth. How could the gender of a man and a woman be determined by a piece of clothing? If a man wore women's clothes, he would still be a man. His body would not turn into a woman. Similarly, if a woman wore men's clothes, she would still be a woman. She would not turn into a man. If Wuma Shang answered wrong, he would be jumping into Jiang Pengji's trap and slapping himself in the face. He said sullenly, Of course that's wrong. Jiang Pengji laughed. That's right. That's wrong. Similarly, I, Lu Shi, am a woman. It's just that I love dressing up as a man. The world thinks I'm a man just because I'm wearing men's clothes. Is this also my fault? I, Lu Shi, have never used makeup to hide my appearance. I've always been barefaced. Outsiders have mistaken me for a man. Do you expect me to tell everyone I meet that I'm a woman? What he meant was, how could he blame others for his own blindness? Wu Mayu was so angry that his face turned red. He pointed at her and said, Ignorant child, this is clearly quibbling. If you had no intention of hiding it, why did you say that you would confess to His Majesty and Empress Dowager after the court session? It's clearly intentional. It's simply an act of deceiving the emperor. You're wrong, Jiang Pengji said strangely. Everyone thinks that Lu Shi is a man, including His Majesty and the Empress Dowager. I didn't sincerely hide it, but I also didn't explain it in time. I also didn't tell everyone I met that I was a woman. That's why I admitted that I was deceiving them. I'm just saying this to give the prefectural governor a way out of this embarrassing situation. I never expected the county governor to be so overbearing. After being tricked by Jiang Pengji again and again, Wu Ma Shang's rage had reached its peak. No matter how much you quibble, you still can't hide the fact that you tried to disguise your gender to take over as Wanzhou's governor. I understand now. Chief Wu Ma is holding on to this matter because she thinks that I, a woman, shouldn't take over as Wanzhou's magistrate? Wu Ma Xing laughed sinisterly. You concealed your gender with the intention of taking over as Wanzhou's governor. You have committed a great crime of deceiving the emperor. What else do you have to say? Jiang Pengji coldly glanced at Wu Ma Shang. I thought that the real crime of deceiving the ruler would be when someone else pretended to be Lu Shi and took over as Wanzhou's magistrate. I never thought that your so-called crime of deceiving the ruler would be when a woman concealed her gender and took over as Wanzhou's magistrate. Lu Shi is still Lu Shi. He's the real Lu Shi, not an outsider pretending to be him. Why can't he take over as Wanzhou's magistrate? Jiang Pengji sneered. Why don't you say that the county chief thinks that women are not qualified to be Wanzhou's magistrate? Wu Ma Shang asked in return. Did I say anything wrong? Of course it's wrong. It's the funniest mistake in the world. Jiang Pengji's voice suddenly became loud and clear. She pointed the ceremonial tablet in her hand at Wu Ma Shang's nose and said forcefully, If you say that women are not qualified to be Wanzhou's magistrate, may I ask whether the Marquis of Guanyi, Su Gong, is a man or a woman? Jiang Pengji's words directly dragged the Su brothers, Su Bei and Su Fei, into the water. They were the descendants of Su Gong. The Su brothers, who had originally thought that they were spectators, looked at each other, then turned their faces away in disgust. Without waiting for Wu Ma Shang's reply, Su Bei stepped forward and answered, Naturally, Su Gong is a woman. Wu Ma Shang's face twitched. He secretly clenched his fists in his sleeves. He looked at Jiang Pengji with a gaze filled with intense hatred. Naturally, Su Gong is a woman. Moreover, she is a heroine who does not lose to men. Jiang Pengji smiled and cupped her hands in greeting to Su Bei. Su Bei also returned Jiang Pengji's greeting in a daze. He was still in a daze. How did the promised younger brother turn into a younger sister? The face was still the same face, the body was still the same body, but the gender had been reversed. Jiang Pengji pressed on. Lu Shi, do not dare to be arrogant and say that I have surpassed my predecessors, but ever since I was young, I have admired Su Gong. I have secretly regarded her as my role model. My dynasty is the legitimate descendant of the Xia dynasty. Naturally, we have to follow the previous dynasty and restore our former glory. I have one last question. Listen carefully, Chief Wu Ma. Now, do you still think that Lu Shi, as a woman, is wrong to take over the position of Wanzhou's magistrate? Wu Ma Shang was about to say that Jiang Pengji was arrogant. How could she compare to Su Gong? Jiang Pengji had already gained the upper hand with her words. Could it be that Chief Wu Ma also agrees with the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women that the people of Zhongzhou worship and regard as the standard? That women should obey the 3 virtues and 4 virtues. That women like Su Gong are women who do not abide by the ways of women, that they should be stripped of their titles and nailed to the pillar of shame. I heard that when the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women was popular in Zhongzhou, many learned scholars even wrote books to condemn Su Gong and other female heroes. Chief Wu Ma, do you agree? Jiang Pengji asked aggressively. You only need to answer yes or no. Wu Ma Shang's face was deathly pale. He could hear countless voices buzzing in his ears. His palms were covered in sticky cold sweat. He stammered, You're twisting words and forcing logic. This kind of woman who does not abide by the ways of women. Enough! A stern rebuke forcefully interrupted Wuma Shang's words. An ivory baton was swung across his face, almost knocking him out. Su Bei's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He asked sternly, "Wuma, you old fool, who are you calling unruly?" Su Fei's temper was not as good as Su Bei's. Chapter 750. They definitely could not tolerate this. The Su family's current prosperity was all due to their ancestors and the generations of descendants. Even the current emperor, let alone Wuma Shang, would remember humiliating their ancestors and settle the score in the future. Su Bei said, "Old man Wuma," and Su Fei quickly followed up with another clean blow. The ceremonial tablet in his hand smashed heavily into Wuma Shang's face. In just a few breaths' time, a slightly swollen red mark appeared on his face. The imperial court assembly froze for a moment. Everyone's attention was on the Su brothers and Wuma Shang, but Jiang Pengji's gaze was fixed on Zhao Jia. She discovered a very interesting detail. When Su Fei threw the ceremonial baton at Wuma Shang, the latter did not dodge in time and was hit squarely by the ivory baton. At the same time, Zhao Jia, who had been kneeling on the ground, subconsciously moved and secretly raised her hand to cover her face. Jiang Pengji curled her lips and smiled. She looked at Zhao Jia with interest. Seeing that the situation was about to get out of control and that the Su brothers were about to gang up on Wuma Shang, the officials close to Wuma Shang stepped out to mediate. "Please calm down. Chief Wuma is not targeting Su Gong. He's only targeting Lu Shi." Su Bei's gaze was cold. He waved his sleeves and snorted, obviously not taking this mediator seriously. Where did this drama queen come from? How dare she add scenes for herself? Su Fei's temper was violent, and he always did things willfully. He did not care about personal feelings or face. "Are you deaf, or did your mind wander?" This old man opened his mouth and said, "This unruly woman." Not only was he targeting Lu Shi, but he also included Su Gong and the other female martyrs. If I could tolerate such insults, I would be a disgrace to the Su family. Old man, listen carefully. If you don't give me an explanation today, don't even think about leaving this palace. The officials' expressions changed when they heard this. Wuma Shang seemed to be stunned by Su Fei's words. It took him a while to recover. He was trying to incite the Su brothers to rebel. "I thought the descendants of the Su family were powerful, but they're just two kids being used as weapons. This is clearly Lu Shi's scheme. He's trying to fish in troubled waters. Su Gong is a woman worthy of respect. How can ordinary women compare to her? Lu Shi is such a despicable person, twisting the truth and causing conflict between you and me. He is truly despicable." Hearing this, the Su brothers did not calm down. Instead, they both snorted and looked at Wuma Shang with disdain. Was there a need for Wuma Shang to explain? Even a blind man could tell that the two brothers had been implicated. At the end of the day, if Wuma Shang had not come looking for trouble, would the two brothers have been implicated? "Old man, don't try and change the topic." Wuma Shang snorted coldly. Wuma Shang snorted heavily, his gaze cold. Master Su and Lu Shi are two separate matters. The two Langjuns of the Su family should not interfere with Lu Shi's matters. Once this official exposes the crime of deceiving the monarch, I will personally visit the two of you to explain and beg for forgiveness. How about that? Su Pei didn't know what to say. Jiang Pengji had dragged them into the water to attract and divert Wuma Shang's attention. If they just left like that, it wouldn't be very loyal. Su Bei wanted to say no. Jiang Pengji had dragged them into the water to divert Wuma Shang's attention. If they just left like that, it would be dishonorable. Su Bei's little scheme wasn't bad. Unfortunately, the two brothers' brainwaves were not on the same channel. Su Fei, who had zero tacit understanding, had ruined his plan. "I want to see what kind of ivory you can spit out from your dog mouth. I want to see what kind of ivory you can spit out from that dog mouth of yours. Stupid pig cousin ah." Su Bei's expression did not change, but he was already cursing Su Fei in his heart. Not only did Su Bei think that the younger brother was a scammer, but the viewers in the streaming room also thought that Su Fei was a scammer. Yidao Hoang, damn, was a pig teammate. Su Fei is a pig teammate. Midnight epilepsy. The host worked so hard to create an advantage, but it was all destroyed by that stupid pig Su Fei. Luochen Buzzishin. I take back what I said. How is Su Fei cute? He's just stupid. This was such a good opportunity. With such a powerful attacker like the host, even if the brothers did not say anything, they would still be able to get some kills in the end. Now, they were defeated by old Wuma with just a few words. If they did not team up to kill the old man, they would just be waiting to be killed. Little Penguin Meow Meow. To the previous poster, I don't agree with you. Our host battle power is over 10,000. She can carry the entire battle by herself. Without the help of the Su brothers, Jiang Pengji seemed to be in a disadvantageous position. Wu Ma Shang laughed coldly. As expected of Lu Zhongqing's son, your ability to twist words and force logic is not bad. Unfortunately, the eyes of the officials are sharp. No matter how much you try to clear your name, sophistry is still sophistry. Don't even think about using the ancestors as a shield. You're just a mere deceiver. How can you be mentioned in the same breath as so many heroes? Lu Shi, what else do you have to say? Unexpectedly, Jiang Pengji looked at the red marks on his face and sneered mockingly. Chief Wuma, do you know why the second son of the former emperor died? This question stunned not only Wu Ma Shang, but the other officials as well. How did the death of the second son of the former emperor have anything to do with the current situation? You're talking nonsense again. Wu Ma Shang furrowed his brows in disgust. Jiang Pengji said, you're wrong. I'm not talking nonsense, and I'm definitely not talking nonsense. The second son of the former emperor was found to have used witchcraft to murder the former emperor and the demon empress. That's why he was killed. His mother's family was also implicated. I suspect that you've been bewitched by witchcraft. The officials were in an uproar. This development was a little scary. They felt like their brains were not enough to process it. Wu Ma Shang's face darkened, and he almost jumped up. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Chief Wu Ma, don't be in such a hurry to deny it. I dare to say this because I have evidence. Just like how Chief Wu Ma was able to find the Zhao Jia as a witness, I also have evidence. However, I'm not Chief Wu Ma. I won't ask you to strip naked in front of everyone. I just need you to do one thing according to my instructions. Jiang Pengji sneered. You and this old woman, one of you say green bamboo, snake's mouth, wasp sting in Langya dialect. The other one says long live the emperor. Long live the emperor in Zhangzhou dialect. When she made this strange request, the officials were still confused. After a while, the old woman said it again in awkward Langya dialect, and Wu Ma Shang followed in Zhangzhou dialect. Jiang Pengji sneered. You seem to have misunderstood. I said it at the same time, not one after the other. Wu Ma Shang stepped forward and scolded, Bitch, don't go too far. Jiang Pengji's voice suddenly became loud, and she used some mental pressure. Are you not willing to say it, afraid to say it, or are you saying that you can't do it? Chapter 751. An official chimed in. Children do not speak of strange things. What kind of witchcraft is this? It's hilarious. Lu Shi, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke up. If the art of witchcraft is just a trick to make people laugh and is not worth mentioning, then the second prince of the late emperor tried to use witchcraft to murder the late emperor but failed. He was killed. In your opinion, the late emperor killed his own son by mistake? The official who had voiced his support broke out in a cold sweat and retreated pathetically. Even though the late emperor's conduct was disdainful, in front of the young emperor, no one could accuse the late emperor of wrongdoing. Lu Shi continued, regardless of whether witchcraft exists or not, Lanting suspects that Chief Wu Ma was controlled by witchcraft. Why not just repeat what she said and say it at the same time? A simple sentence can break through Lanting slander. Why not? What's there to talk about? Su Bei, who had missed a golden opportunity, also voiced his support. That's right. Chief Wu Ma and this old woman can just say it at the same time. If they can say it, then it's Lu Shi who is slandering you and the witchcraft is non-existent. If they can't say it, then it'll be interesting. At that moment, everyone's gazes were focused on Wu Ma Shang and the old woman. Their expressions stiffened. Under the watchful eyes of the public, they finally steeled their hearts and prepared to speak. But no matter what they said, one of them opened his mouth and the other closed it. They could not speak at the same time. It was very strange. At that moment, the officials who were originally just watching the show could not help but feel their hair stand on end. They secretly moved their seats back. They tried a few times, but they all failed. Their faces grew paler and paler. The officials felt their hair stand on end. The atmosphere in the court was developing in the direction of the supernatural. The audience in the streaming room was also shocked. They had imagined many scenarios, but none of them could guess the direction of the plot. Intuition. Oh my god, this is too strange. I feel goosebumps all over my body. Ishio Shiniangxiang. That's strange. Why can't they speak at the same time? Bow by you, princess. Wait, let me think. Could it be that the two of them are actually being controlled by the same person? Jiang Pengji glanced at the streaming room and smiled to herself. Some people's guesses were very close to the truth, but not all of them were correct. Host V. Ever since they appeared, they haven't spoken at the same time. When one person's expression changed, the other person remained expressionless. Of course, this wasn't really evidence. The most obvious flaw was when Su Fei had hit Wu Ma Shang with the ceremonial tablet. Wu Ma Shang hadn't been able to react and had been hit, but the woman had instinctively dodged and covered her face with her hands. Of the two of them, one was standing and the other was kneeling. The ceremonial tablet flying towards Wu Ma Shang had no chance of hitting the woman. So what was she hiding from? Some of the audience understood Jiang Pengji's explanation, but others did not. Years flow like water. Let me make an analogy. You guys have played computer games before, right? If he were to open 2 accounts to do daily quests and encounter a red name, he would panic and want to switch to the DPS account to fight or switch to the healer account to save his life. However, switching pages required time, and if he was too flustered, he might even get the wrong account. It was impossible to use both accounts at the same time. I think I understand what the host is trying to say. Wu Ma Shang and that woman are actually one person controlling 2 accounts? With such an explanation, the slow-witted audience members finally understood. Some of them even found it funny. Sang Shue Shijian. Haha, I suddenly remembered the host's request. One person spoke in the Langyi dialect, and the other spoke in the Zhangzhou dialect. This was no longer doing 2 things at the same time. It was clearly doing 4 things at the same time. There were very few people who could do 4 things at the same time. Obviously, the person in front of her couldn't do it. As the saying went, strike while you're down. Adhering to the principle of beating a drowning dog, Jiang Pengji ruthlessly stepped on it. Your Majesty, I still want to sue Wu Ma Shang for perjury. Jiang Pengji pointed at the woman, who had a pale expression on her face, and said, This person claims to be a servant of my deceased mother's dowry, so she should be used to doing rough work. Why are there no thick calluses on her hands, but instead they are as smooth as a baby's? When she said this, the woman subconsciously raised her hands and looked at them. Her palms were white. Not to mention thick calluses, there wasn't even a mark of labor. They were smooth and delicate. The officials were not blind. They noticed this after Jiang Pengji's reminder, and their hearts skipped a beat. This was an assassin? Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and accused them one by one. If it was just for me, why would Chief Wu Ma need to mobilize so many people and specially find someone to disguise as my deceased mother's dowry? Jiang Pengji accused in a stern voice. I'm afraid that this witchcraft was arranged by someone with ulterior motives to harm your majesty and assassinate the officials. The old woman was so angry that her whole body trembled. Her voice suddenly changed to the high-pitched voice of a young woman. Lucy, you be *TCH. No matter what she said, there were already important officials shouting for help, and the Imperial Guards outside rushed in. The entire court was in a mess. Seeing the Imperial Guards rush in, the old woman was furious. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, she flicked her 10 fingers, which were at least 3 inches long, with a swoosh. Her fingernails were extremely sharp, and they could directly tear a person into pieces. The young emperor had long since wet his pants in tears on the dragon throne. The Empress Dowager and a group of servant girls screamed in fear. "Protect the Emperor! Protect the Emperor! There's an assassin!" The court was in a mess. The old woman planned to take advantage of the chaos to break out of the encirclement, but from the corner of her eye, she saw Lu Shi, who had been sitting still like a mountain. She broke out of the encirclement in Lu Shi's direction. She couldn't kill Lu Shi, but she wanted to kill Lu Shi to vent her anger. However, before she could put this idea into action, her lower abdomen was hit by a huge force that was as heavy as a mountain. Her body was like a kite with a broken string. She flew backward for 2 or 3 feet. "It's you again, B*TCH. The corner of the old woman's mouth was broken, and bright red blood flowed out. The officials nearby were so scared that they shrank to a corner of the court. Jiang Pengji stood not far from Lu Shi and sneered. "Once you're new, twice you get used to it. This is already the 3rd time." At that moment, the old woman heard a warning from the system. "Host, Lu Shi is not easy to deal with. Grab a hostage and escape quickly." The old woman was furious, but she also knew that Jiang Pengji was not easy to deal with. If she didn't want to die, she could only escape. She waved her hand in the air, pulled out an exquisite and gorgeous long sword, and directly attacked the person closest to her. Her target was Huang Song. She was about to get the hostage, but someone else moved faster than her. Jiang Pengji picked up an ivory baton that had been thrown on the ground. After predicting its trajectory, she threw it at the old woman. Under the infusion of power, the baton flew at the old woman's legs, waist, left chest, neck, and between the eyebrows with the force of a thunderbolt. Huang Song was already far away, but he didn't expect to be so unlucky. Facing the old woman who was attacking him, he had nowhere to hide. He could only watch as the silver nails rapidly grew larger in front of his eyes. Just when he thought he was going to die, the old woman's body exploded in front of his eyes. Chapter 752. Blood splattered on Huang Song's face, drenching him in a daze. For a moment, the court was silent, as if someone had pressed the pause button. The dismembered body fell to the ground with a dull thud. The thick blood spread out and wet the socks on Huang Song's feet. "Protect!" The eunuch serving the emperor shouted for help as he carried the young emperor, who had wet his pants, off the throne. He had wanted to send the emperor to a safe place, but he saw the scene when he retreated in a panic. The words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't spit them out. The young emperor had witnessed the whole process. He was so scared that his tears had stopped flowing, and he couldn't stop trembling. Huang Song's face was sprayed with blood and brain matter. His court clothes were stained with flesh and organs. His eyes were wide open because of fear, as if his eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. Only when the imperial guards took down the muddle-headed chief of Shanghai County did his rapidly beating heart slowly return to a normal rhythm. In the eyes of outsiders, the old woman's fingernails had suddenly grown long, and she had torn several imperial guard alive with her bare hands. She looked like a demon. Such a powerful demon had been smashed into pieces by Jiang Pengji's 5 ivory batons. Then there was a problem. Wasn't Lu Shi more terrifying than a demon? Huang Song's psychological quality was still very high, but when he came to his senses, he found that his legs were sore and weak. With a plop, he knelt on the ground. Not far from him was the dismembered body of the old woman. One of her eyeballs was hanging out of her socket, and the other had rolled to the side of her head. One of the batons had been aimed at her waist, and her intestines had flowed out of the wound. Huang Song had seen such a bloody scene before, but the current scene was even more impactful. He couldn't hold it in for a moment. His stomach convulsed, acid gushed out, and the urge to vomit rushed to his head. Wretch! He raised his hand to cover his mouth, tilted his head, and vomited. At first, he could vomit the remains of his breakfast, but later, only acid was left. Not only was Huang Song in a sorry state, but the other officials were also trembling with fear. They were so scared that they didn't dare to make sound. Their faces were pale, and they were losing blood. They were afraid that if they breathed too loudly, they would attract the attention of the killer. In the entire court, Only Jiang Pengji and Lu Shi were calm. "Your Majesty, I have killed the demon." Jiang Pengji looked calm and collected. She folded her sleeves slightly and bowed respectfully in the direction of the young emperor. Her voice was calm and clear, like a command. The time in court began to move again. The officials, who had been too frightened to move, also came back to their senses. One by one, they found that their inner robes were soaked in sticky sweat. Looking at their dumbfounded expressions, the viewers in the live stream expressed their disdain. All of them were high-ranking officials, yet they were scared **less by such a small battle. How embarrassing. Blood C. Liu Xiong. The voice of all the officials. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? Xiao Xiaonan. I'm scared to death. I've heard that there are super bloody scenes in this live broadcast room, but I didn't expect it to be so bloody. Diligent lazy woman. I don't think this is bloody. At most, it's disgusting. The real bloody scene can only be seen when the host goes to the battlefield. That scene is magnificent and bloody. However, I felt sorry for Huang Song. This experience would leave a big shadow in his heart. If Huang Song has a conflict of interest with our anchor in the future, do you think he will back down before the fight even starts? Lao Siji Lianmeng, I don't think so. There will be a shadow in his heart, but Huang Song is not a simple character. He has experienced much more horrifying and bloody scenes than this. Compared to this, I think the fact that the host is a woman will leave a bigger shadow in his heart. The viewers in the live stream room have been following the updates for a long time, so they were more or less mentally prepared. However, the officials and officials present were completely unprepared. First, the old woman turned into a monster, her 10 fingers spitting out 3 inches of silver white nails as she tore a living person apart with her bare hands. Then, Jiang Pengji used the ivory baton to smash the old woman into pieces. The entire process took less than 5 or 6 breaths, but they felt as if 10,000 years had passed in a blink of an eye. Who would have thought that the ivory baton that was usually used as a memo could be used as a hidden weapon to tear people to pieces? The young emperor was still hugging Huang Min's neck and wailing. Clear yellow urine dripped down the hem of his clothes. Jiang Pengji had no choice but to repeat it again. The atmosphere in the courtroom was at a standstill until the exasperated voice of Wuma Shang, the county chief of Shanghai, pulled them back to reality. "How dare you? Who allowed you to treat me like this? Let me go." Wuma Shang felt dizzy, as if he was covered in a thick fog. He couldn't even see his own fingers. At some point, the fog dissipated, and the clouds parted to reveal the sun. His vision and mind became clear again. He blinked his eyes in confusion and was shocked to find that his hands were tied behind his back. He was kneeling on the ground in a sorry state. At that moment, Wuma Shang, who had lived like a prince for a long time, couldn't hold it in anymore. He yelled at the guards. The bewildered and helpless officials immediately turned their attention to Wuma Shang. If it weren't for this guy, how could today's farce have happened? The Empress Dowager, who had been frightened to the point of losing all color, forced herself to calm down. She said angrily, "Guards, arrest the traitor Wuma Shang and await his punishment." Wuma Shang didn't understand the current situation. When he heard the Empress Dowager's words, the flames in his heart surged. In his memory, the two of them were just having a good time not long ago. They were so tired that they were sweating profusely. Now, in the blink of an eye, they had become merciless. Wait, Jiang Pengji stopped the guard from arresting Wuma Shang. Reporting to the Empress Dowager, who County Chief Wuma Shang must have fallen for a despicable trick. Today's incident wasn't his fault. If we arrest him without clarifying the situation, Chief Wuma is being wrongly accused. The Empress Dowager was secretly resentful. Her armor was deeply embedded in her flesh as she moved. Her full lips were bitten by her pearly white teeth. She would never forget the scene of her seducing Lu Shi. Now that she thought about it, she was angry, hateful, embarrassed, and annoyed. No matter how much she offered to sleep with him, this person remained indifferent. He could only watch as she, who was as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as jade, was tortured by the secret fragrance. He thought it was Liu Xiaohui, but it turned out to be a fake Lang Jun. Wu Ma Shang was even more flustered. When he heard Jiang Pengji's words, he immediately climbed up the pole and shouted that he was innocent. Your subject just woke up in a daze. I don't know what happened. I'm being wrongly accused. Your Majesty and the Empress Dowager, please understand. Wu Ma Shang wasn't lying. Before he woke up, he clearly remembered that he and the Empress Dowager were having a good time together. He was so happy that he forgot everything else. That night, he slept very deeply. When he woke up, he found himself in the royal court, surrounded by the imperial guards. He was so scared that he didn't know how to react. Jiang Pengji's thin lips curled up slightly. Her eyes were filled with malice. She asked in a clear voice, Chief Wu Ma, have you forgotten what happened just now? Wu Ma Shang shook his head. He really didn't remember. Chapter 753. Just now? What happened? Wu Ma Shang's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling about the petty tricks Jiang Pengji had mentioned. Just now, Chief Wu Ma brought a woman to the court and tried to expose my identity as a woman. He was determined to punish me for deceiving the emperor. Wu Ma Shang was dumbfounded. His shocked expression could not be faked. Wait, why did he understand every word Liu Shi said, but he couldn't understand them when they were put together? More importantly, Wu Ma Shang was dumbfounded. You're a woman? It felt as absurd as a 9-foot-tall, burly, bearded man calling himself a woman with a charming face. Jiang Pengji nodded. Yes, Chief Wu Ma kept talking about this and wanted to use it to punish me. Later, I noticed that Chief Wu Ma and the old woman had strange expressions. Only then did I realize that Chief Wu Ma had been harmed by a petty person's witchcraft. Wu Ma Shang's mind was muddled. He was indeed unhappy with Jiang Pengji, but there was nothing wrong with his brain. Look at the young emperor. What good could deceiving the emperor do? He cursed in his heart, but on the surface, he kept pleading innocence. He insisted that he had been bewitched by someone using witchcraft. No matter what, Wu Ma Shang was the chief of Shanghai County, an old fox who had been in the bureaucracy for many years. As long as he insisted that he was innocent and that he had been harmed by witchcraft, he could turn today's matter into a small one. No matter what, he was still one of the Alliance's 10,000 elite troops. The court could not use this excuse to kill him. There were many officials who were close to Wu Ma Shang, and they all stood up to speak for him. For a moment, the Empress Dowager was in a difficult position. With the help of the officials, Wu Ma Shang's panicked heart calmed down a lot. He calmed down and began to think about who was behind this. No matter how he thought about it, the Empress Dowager was the most suspicious. Why was he so suspicious? First, before he woke up, he had sex with the Empress Dowager. He had so much fun fighting with her that he was sweating all over. After venting, his guard was at its lowest. The Empress Dowager had the highest success rate. She could harm him without him knowing. Second, before the young emperor ascended the throne, he was the young emperor's biggest competitor. Would the Empress Dowager be willing to let a hidden threat like him live? No matter how he thought about it, the Empress Dowager was most likely to plot against him. If the plan succeeded, not only would they be able to take his head and power, but they would also be able to deal a heavy blow to the Liu family's father and son. Bah, the Liu family's father and daughter. Unfortunately, with the emperor's current prestige, not to mention the crime of deceiving the emperor, even if he carried a sword into the palace, he would still be fine. Which idiot would think that the crime of deceiving the emperor would be enough to topple the Liu father and daughter? Which idiot? Thinking about this, Wu Ma Shang was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He had really suffered an undeserved calamity. It would have been fine if he could have used this opportunity to topple Lady Liu and her father. Unfortunately, it wasn't effective, and he was even dragged into this mess. The most important thing now was to rescue himself from the quagmire. He could think about the future later. Once he saved himself, he would find the Empress Dowager, that poisonous woman, to settle the score. Wu Ma Shang broke free from the Imperial Guard's restraints, straightened his messy clothes, and bowed to Jiang Pengji in apology. Just now, this official was careless and fell for a despicable person's trick. This is why I wrongly accused the middle chief general. Please forgive me, Middle Chief General. Wu Mashang's ability to say polite words was not weak. He said righteously, in this official's opinion, the Middle Chief General is a woman who is not inferior to a man. Regardless of whether she is a man or a woman, she is a good minister of the country. The crime of deceiving the emperor is even more unfounded. The despicable person behind this is truly despicable. This official will not forgive her. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, County Chief Wuma, you praise me too much. How can I be as good as the Middle Chief General? Wu Mashang waved his hand and smiled amiably. Don't be humble. In this official's opinion, having a daughter like this makes me envious of Lu Zhongqing's good fortune. If this official remembers correctly, I think it's time to call you the Middle Chief General instead of the Wanzhou Magistrate. You are so young, yet you are truly a heroine. Jiang Pengji said, Not yet. I was just about to thank you, but Chief Wuma interrupted me. But you can't blame the chief. If you want to blame someone, blame the despicable person behind this. To think that they would bring such an evil method like witchcraft into the court. Fortunately, they did not cause too much damage. This official is ashamed. Wu Mashang climbed up the ladder and used this opportunity to clean himself up. Jiang Pengji accepted the position of Wanzhou Magistrate as she had wished. The viewers in the streaming room were a little disappointed. They had thought that Jiang Pengji would use this opportunity to kill Wu Mashang as well. Jiang Pengji replied with one sentence. Host V, there's no rush. Wu Mashang has now targeted the Emperor and the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager went for wool and came home shorn. No matter what, Wu Mashang was still the chief of Shanghai County. He had tens of thousands of troops under his command. He could secretly torture the mother and son to death. Jiang Pengji kept Wu Mashang alive because she wanted to use him to keep the young emperor and the Empress Dowager in check. At the same time, she could make Wu Mashang owe her a favor. Wu Mashang did not participate in the sales of the flashing bricks. She could use this opportunity to sell them at a high price and extort money from him. At that moment, someone in the audience suddenly remembered something. Diligent, lazy woman. Oh, I suddenly thought of something. The little emperor is so weak now. Does the host want to try holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around? Just like Boss Chow, when his power reaches a certain stage, he can add 9/10 to himself. Then he can establish a country and proclaim himself emperor. Holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around? The viewers in the streaming room were as excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They all encouraged Jiang Pengji to give it a try. Of course, other than those who supported it, there were also many viewers who were not optimistic about the policy of holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around. Yinuajia Zhuge Qinma. Boss Chow can hold the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around. He needs the right conditions to implement this policy. The Han royal family has indeed declined, but there are still many loyal Han officials who are not completely disappointed in the Han royal family. For example, Sun Lingjun, who worked under Boss Chow. He has been an official for more than 30 years and has been receiving Han salaries. He is still loyal to the Han royal family and not Boss Chow. In the end, they fell out because Boss Chow wanted to go solo. With such a loyal Han official, it indirectly shows that the Han royal family still has a certain amount of deterrence to the nobles around the world. That's why Boss Chow holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around would be effective. According to the Dongxing royal family, holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around would not work. What does holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around mean? In layman's terms, it's using the name of the emperor to issue orders, gather power, and have a good reason for doing so. The world is now divided into 5 parts. The emperor of Dongxing is not the only emperor, so there is insufficient centralization of power. In addition, Dongxing has only been established for a short period of time. The successive emperors have worn away the feelings that the talented scholars of Dongxing have for the royal family. As a result, the scholars of the world are far from loyal to the emperor. Under such circumstances, how many people will still be loyal to the Dongxing royal family? It can't be said that there are none, but there are only a handful of them. who will really take the young emperor's orders seriously. As for the advantage of having a good reason for doing so, it's even more useless. The host has a bad temper. She can hit whoever she wants. She can casually come up with a reason to do so. Chapter 754. She had a good reason to do so. Her will was the most reasonable reason. To Jiang Pingji, the strategy of holding the emperor hostage to command the nobles was of little value. Not only would holding the young emperor hostage not bring her any benefits, but it would also become a burden to her. Therefore, even when the audience in the streaming room urged her to try holding the emperor hostage to command the nobles, Jiang Pengji was indifferent. Bogeo, are you all right? Jiang Pengji extended her hand in front of Huang Song. He stretched out his hand in a daze. She pulled him up with all her might. Thank you, Lanting. Huang Song let out a long sigh of relief. He was about to wipe his sweat when he realized that his sleeve was covered in blood. The urge to vomit that he had tried so hard to suppress surged up again. He hurriedly bowed in apology, turned around, and vomited again. This time, he didn't even have the stomach acid, only the unbearable retching. As for the fact that Jiang Pengji was a woman, Huang Song had completely forgotten about it. Or rather, he didn't have the energy to think about it. When the old woman had torn apart a few palace guards, Yang Jian had protected the young emperor with his own body. Now that he was safe, he rejoined the crowd of officials. Lu Zhongqing, is that really your daughter? Yang Jian was a military officer. His rank was not on the same level as Lu Shi's. Taking advantage of the chaos, he took the opportunity to approach Lu Shi and ask. Lu Shi smiled calmly, but the moment he opened his mouth, he choked. If she's not my daughter, then is she yours? Yang Jian almost lost his composure. Who's arguing with you? I'm asking you a serious question. Lanting is my daughter, of course. It's been hard on her to dress as a man all these years, Lu Shi said calmly. Yang Jian was speechless. His expression became very strange and awkward. Lu Shi asked him, what? Your expression is so strange. Could it be that you've suffered at Lanting's hands and now feel defeated? Yang Jian snorted, turned his head, and ignored Lu Shi. However, Lu Shi had indeed said what he was thinking. After losing to a young man, Yang Jian could still say that the new generation surpassed the old. He was old and not as good as the young. But now, he was told that the young man who had defeated him was a young girl. While Yang Jian was shocked, he also felt an indescribable sense of defeat. However, when he recalled the scene of Jiang Pengji killing people with the ivory baton, he couldn't help but be impressed. With such godly strength and skills, he did not lose unjustly. The eunuch and the imperial guards cleaned up the old woman's body and cleaned up the bloodstains on the ground. The young emperor was also carried away to change into a set of royal robes. It was not nice to hear that the emperor had peed himself in fear. It would be too absurd if the emperor continued to attend a court meeting in a robe that reeked of urine. With the help of the incense burner, the stench of blood in the air was diluted, but the thrilling scene just now was deeply imprinted in the minds of the officials. The ministers returned to their respective positions. Yang Tao patted his chest with some lingering fear. Father, is Lu Shi really a woman? Yang Jian used the ivory bat in his hand to slightly cover his face. He tilted his head and said to Yang Tao, Lu Zhongqing has already admitted to it. How can it be false? Yang Tao widened his eyes in shock and nervously swallowed his saliva. He recalled Jiang Pengji's ruthlessness in killing people on the battlefield and found it hard to accept. It's hard to imagine. He was originally a brave man, but how did he become a woman in one day? Yang Jian's army had cooperated with Jiang Pengji before, and Yang Tao liked to play with swords and spears. He had always regarded Jiang Pengji as a brother and confidant. So what if he's a woman? Yang Jian glared at his useless son. It doesn't matter whether he's a man or a woman. What's important is that he's now the governor of Wanzhou. Look at you. If it weren't for Xiaoyang helping you out, I wouldn't have dared to bring you out of the house. Yang Tao's personality worried Yang Jian a lot. If it weren't for Yin Lin, his caring nanny and best friend, watching over him, Yang Jian wouldn't have dared to bring Yang Tao out. He only had one son in this life, and he was afraid that his son would be too simple-minded and torment himself to death. Yang Tao hung his head and pursed his lips. Yang Jian was so angry that he wanted to hit someone. From what I can see, you look more like a noble lady than Lu Zhongqing's daughter. You're a man. What are you feeling wronged for? Raise your head. Yang Tao felt wronged every day. On the other side, Wu Ma Shang, who had finally escaped danger, returned to his seat. The officials around him moved away, avoiding him as if he was a poisonous snake. Although Wu Ma Shang kept saying that he was innocent, the scene just now was too horrifying. The officials were traumatized. Su Bei was silent. Su Fei seemed to have remembered something. He raised his hand and poked his cousin's waist with his ceremonial tablet. What are you doing? Su Bei glared at him angrily. Su Fei raised his eyebrows and said gloatingly, Brother Pei, if I remember correctly, you had a dancer serve Lu Shi? Su Bei's expression darkened. It would have been better if Su Fei hadn't brought that up. Now that he did, he got angry. Everyone here was a descendant of a Su family. Su Fei's backstabbing tactics were too vicious. Su Bei had always believed that Su Fei had tried to drive a wedge between him and the Lu family. Naturally, he wouldn't be nice to Su Fei now. You remember correctly. So what? There are men out there, and you don't allow Lu Shi to like women. Is such a small matter worth being surprised by? You're acting like you've never seen the world before. Su Bei was in a bad mood. His pig-like cousin had been stupid once or twice, but he'd just ruined his plans. He'd missed a chance to make the Lu family owe him a favor. Su Fei had wanted to see his cousin embarrass himself, but he hadn't expected him to have such a bad temper. Instead, he'd scolded him. This time, Su Fei also snorted coldly. The two brothers continued to stare at each other in disgust. As the subject of the discussion, Jiang Pengji was very calm. This time, she'd safely removed her appointment as Wanzhou's magistrate. The officials couldn't be jealous of her. They just stood there like background characters. How dare they be jealous? Think back to that old woman. One blink of an eye, she'd been alive and well. The next, she'd turned into a pile of dismembered corpses. They were all ordinary people. Their bodies weren't as tough as demons and ghosts. 5 ceremonial tablets weren't needed. One was enough to send them to the next world. The court meeting ended anticlimactic. The hundreds of officials and officials floated out of the main hall, still confused. In less than half a day, the news that Jiang Pengji was a woman spread like wildfire throughout the imperial city of Qinzhou. Ha ha, Master Yang, Master Feng, I've heard an especially funny joke today. Li Yun and the other generals were staying at the camp outside the city. However, he had nothing to do after training his troops, so he entered the city for a stroll. Halfway there, Li Yun heard an especially funny piece of news. He immediately came over to share it with Yang Si and Feng Zhen. Yang Si wasn't around. Feng Zhen held a scallion pancake in one hand and wrote cursive calligraphy. When he heard Li Yun's laughter, he almost made a mistake. What's the funny joke? Let me hear it. Feng Zhen put down his brush and stuffed the last piece of scallion pancake into his mouth. He drank a mouthful of tea to moisten his mouth. Someone outside says that our Lord is a woman. Ha ha, don't you think it's funny? Feng Zhen looked at Li Yun with pity, as if he was caring for his retarded child. Li Yun laughed. When he realized that Feng Zhen didn't laugh with him, he stopped writing in boredom. You don't think it's funny? This is reality. Our Lord is a woman. Why should she laugh? Li Yun was speechless. Chapter 755. Feng Zhen glanced sideways at the bamboo scroll on his table, then looked at Li Yun's lifeless expression. His mood inexplicably improved. Han Mei, what's with that expression? Such a beautiful child on the outside, yet he was so dull on the inside. What a waste. Li Yun snapped out of his daze and said helplessly, Mr. Feng, am I dreaming right now? This dream feels too real. Feng Zhen was speechless and felt like teasing him. Why do you say it's a dream? Come, come, come. Stretch out your arm and let me pinch it for you. See if it hurts. Li Yun obediently did as he was told. He stretched out his muscular right arm and rolled up his sleeve, revealing tight muscles that made Feng Zhen green with envy. thinking about the soft flesh on his arm, and then looking at Li Yun's tight biceps. He found it irritating no matter how he looked at it. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Mister, you're pinching too hard. Li Yun almost burst into tears. Fengzhen wasn't pinching him with his fingers. He was clearly pinching him with his nails. It hurt like hell. Do you still feel like you're dreaming? Fengzhen resumed his serious demeanor, making it impossible to tell that he was doing it deliberately. Mr. Feng, since I'm not dreaming, why do people outside say that my lord is a woman? Even you believe this absurd news? Li Yun put down his sleeve, feeling wronged. He felt dizzy, as if his mind was stuffed with too much information for him to digest. If he knew about the term sex change, he would probably suspect that when he woke up early in the morning, his lord had a sex change. Fengzhen laughed involuntarily. Our lord is a woman, but because of some internal affairs, she had to disguise herself as a man. Do you understand? Li Yun nodded blankly, looking as if he was daydreaming. After a while, he suddenly remembered something. Mister, I think I've seen my lord dressed as a woman before. She clearly doesn't look like a woman. Li Yun clenched his fists nervously. He still found it hard to accept this reality. How can such an imposing man like my lord be a woman? Forgive me for being disrespectful, but I feel that if I were to dress as a woman, put on makeup, and tidy myself up, I would probably look more like a woman than my lord. What do you think, mister? Fengzhen almost bit his own tongue. Li Yun, this silly child, how could he be so honest? However, looking at the handsome man in front of him with red lips and white teeth, Fengzhen felt that Li Yun's words weren't unreasonable. When did you see the lord in women's clothes? Fengzhen had been with Jiang Pengji for quite some time, but he had never seen her wear anything other than men's clothing. Li Yun answered honestly. When the lord first established the women's camp, the people of Xiangyang district suspected that the women's camp was an indecent brothel. Even the soldiers of the men's camp thought so. In order to change the impression of the female battalion in the eyes of others, the lord wore the uniform of the female battalion and chose the recruit camp of the male battalion. Right, I remember that Vice Commandant Yan was also one of those recruits. He should also have an impression. Thinking of this, Li Yun's face suddenly paled, the healthy flush on his cheeks fading. Fengzhen was immersed in the gossip. He noticed Li Yun's odd behavior and hurriedly asked, What's wrong with you, Han Mei? Why do you look so pale? Are you feeling unwell? Li Yun shook his head slowly and stammered. Mr. Feng. Yin suddenly remembered something. When the lord said that he wanted to disguise himself as a woman, Yin blurted out, A man as imposing as the lord, if you disguise yourself as a woman, Yin won't look good. Yin didn't mean it when I said that. With the lord's personality, he shouldn't have remembered it until now. Right? After a while, Li Yun still didn't receive a reply from Fengzhen. He raised his head and observed Fengzhen carefully. He realized that the other was looking at the position behind him with a faint smile. Wait, the position behind him? Li Yun's back stiffened, and he turned his head with a creak. Yeah, Jiang Pengji crossed her arms and looked at Li Yun and Fengzhen with interest. Yang Si followed behind her. My lord. Li Yun wasn't completely dumbfounded. He hurriedly sat up straight, but his heart was beating like a drum. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I never knew that I had such an image in Han Mei's heart. How could he still remember the old scores from years ago? Jiang Pengji smiled as she walked into the main hall and knelt down at the head of the table. Li Yun's head drooped lower and lower. Seeing the group favorite Li Yun being bullied by Jiang Pengji, the viewers in the streaming room were heartbroken. Beauty Zhenmi. Trash streamer, you say you won't hold a grudge, but don't bully the little angel Han Mei. Trash Chow Pai. That's right, that's right. Look at how scared my Han Mei is. His face is several shades paler than usual. The viewers in the streaming room felt injustice for Li Yun. How would Li Yun know? He knew he had a guilty conscience. He lowered his head and admitted his mistake. The Lord is magnanimous. Naturally, you're not a petty person who haggles over minor matters. Jiang Pengji held back her laughter and waved her hand. Forget it. I won't tease you anymore. Look at you. It's as if I've bullied you. The alarm was lifted. Li Yun heaved a long sigh of relief. He quickly threw the risk to the back of his mind. He lifted his head and stared at Jiang Pengji's face. He wanted to say something, but stopped himself. Jiang Pengji, supported her cheek with one hand and said, "I'm indeed a woman. No matter how you look at me, I won't turn into a man. Instead of being surprised here, why don't you go back and practice your martial arts? You can't even defeat a woman like me, yet you still want to build a career and marry my one." Lian widened his eyes in shock. He stammered, My lord, I was wrong." Fengzhen listened to their conversation. He held back his laughter until his cheeks hurt. Isn't the Lord holding a grudge? She was threatening Li Yun with every word. If he can't defeat her, he can forget about marrying Shang Wanwan. If this isn't holding a grudge, then what is? Li Yun was quite pitiful to have such a lord. Li Yun floated back to the campsite outside the city. When he started practicing his spear in a daze, he suddenly remembered something. Shouldn't he continue to be shocked or suspect that his lord is a woman? Why did he come here to practice his spear? After thinking about it, Li Yun felt that he couldn't be the only one who was confused. Vice Commandant Dian, have you heard the rumors in the city? Dian Yin was a pragmatic person. He liked to practice by himself when he had nothing to do. He did more than he spoke. What rumors? Li Yun said, It's already spread throughout the imperial city. They say that our lord is a woman. Dian Yin snorted coldly when he heard that. He threw the axes in his hands onto the ground. Which idiot dares to slander people like that? I'll chop him in half. Meng Hun, who had just finished practicing, happened to walk over. When he heard that, he echoed, How can you believe such a ridiculous thing? Li Yun was speechless. What if it's true? Li Yun asked softly. Dian Wei and Meng Hun were straightforward martial artists. It was easier to befriend honest people. Chapter 756. Meng Hun said in a tiger's voice, Han Mei, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't beat around the bush. Li Yun said directly, Our lord is really a woman. Meng Hun raised his hand and touched Li Yun's forehead. He did not have a fever. I'm telling the truth. The lord has already admitted it. Li Yun gently pushed Meng Hun's hand away. You don't believe me? Who would believe such a joke? Meng Hun shook his head, and so did Dian Yin. Li Yun said, Deputy Commandant, Dian has seen the lord in female attire. Have you forgotten that the lord single-handedly challenged the men's recruit camp? Dian Yin was stunned for a moment. He carefully tried to recall the relevant memories, and only after a while did he find a vague impression. Under the gaze of his two companions, he said, I can't remember anything else. I only remember that the female soldier was quite manly. Li Yun, please don't let Master hear this. When Jiang Pengji revealed her true gender, not only were her subordinates in an uproar, but other forces were also discussing it. My lord is back. When Feng Zhu heard the report from outside, he hurriedly got up to greet her. He was shocked to find that his lord's image was exceptionally bad. My lord, what's with the blood all over your body? What happened in the morning assembly today? Feng Zhu was originally worried that Huang Song would be injured, but after taking a closer look, he heaved a sigh of relief. Apart from her pale face, there was nothing wrong with her. Huang Song raised his hand to wipe his face. When his fingertips touched the dried blood, the thrilling scene from before appeared in his mind again. His stomach felt uncomfortable again. He waved his hand and said in a low voice, I'm fine. Today's court session is a long story. I'll go to the backyard to wash up and change my clothes. Feng Zhu thought of something and called out to Huang Song. My lord, Madam came over this morning. Huang Song's nerves tightened. Why is Madam here? As newlyweds, of course I can't bear to part with my lord. Feng Zhu teased with a smile. Huang Song had been engaged 2 years ago. It was not until half a year ago that he married the noble woman of an aristocratic family. His wife's surname was Qi. This woman was bold and courageous. On the night of their wedding, she ordered her maid to guard outside the bridal chamber with a knife. Every time Huang Song went to the backyard, he felt wronged, as if he was handing over public goods to the boss. This is killing me. Huang Song gritted his teeth, his expression as if he was in so much pain that he wanted to die. All right, Feng Zhu continued. The 2 young ladies that old master arranged for Lord were thrown out by Madam from the back door. Huang Song staggered and almost fell on the steps. His legs were trembling, and he had to hold onto the pillar to stand. He stuttered. Huaijia, do you have an explanation? I didn't even lay a finger on those two ladies. Fengju was not Jiang Pengji. She might occasionally have some wicked interests, but she did not like to torment her lord. I've already told Madame, and she seems to be in a good mood. I gave the two women some money to settle down and sent them away. Huang Song heaved a long sigh of relief. He felt as if he had flown back to earth from hell. At the mention of Madame Qi, Huang Song felt his legs and stomach tremble. Before he got married, Huang Song had 3 maids serving him. They weren't even considered lowly concubines. After getting married, Lady Qi sent all 3 maids to the side courtyard the next day. He even left behind a sentence. If they wanted to find a way out and marry someone else, she would give them a dowry. If they dared to continue pestering Huang Song, she would send them to their deaths for free. Although Madame Qi was only 16 years old, she was very good at managing her husband. Huang Song was afraid of and loved her at the same time. Every time, he would consciously give in to her. Is Madame in a good mood? Huang Song asked again. Fengju smiled faintly and said, Not bad. Don't be afraid, Lord. If Madame saw a lord like this, she would feel sorry for you. I'm relieved to hear that. Huang Song encouraged himself and went to the backyard. As Fengju expected, Madame Qi was shrewish by nature, but she was still extremely protective of Huang Song. Seeing him like this, she immediately became angry. Who dares to use weapons in the court? Huang Song said, Madam, don't be angry. If it weren't for this one's blood, I wouldn't have been able to come back today. After saying that, he honestly explained all the factors that might have caused family conflicts. In the end, he also told her about what had happened in the court. Lansing and I are really good friends. I really didn't know that she was a woman. Madam, please don't believe the rumors in the outside world. Huang Song was really afraid of women. Having a beautiful wife at home was like a tiger, and having a good friend outside was like a wolf. Overnight, the whole world had changed. Madame Qi pinched her handkerchief. At first, she was a little jealous, but her husband's life had been saved by Jiang Pengji, so she felt relieved. Bogeo, you say that as if I'm very narrow-minded. Since Lu Shi is your good friend, and he saved your life today, by right, our family should prepare a generous gift to thank him. You didn't know that he was a woman before, but now you can't act recklessly. If you want to come and thank him, I'll go on your behalf. Madame Qi pitifully wiped his face with a handkerchief and said, I've already asked the servants to prepare hot soup and clean clothes. Bogeo, go wash up. I'll go to the storeroom first and prepare a thank you gift. Huang Song nodded as if he was pounding garlic. After taking a shower, Huang Song took his clothes to the front hall. Fengju and Cheng Jing were talking. When Cheng Jing saw Huang Song coming over, he hurriedly asked, What happened in the morning court today? I heard from Huaijia that someone started a war in the court. Huang Song nodded and said with a wretched expression, I didn't look at the almanac when I went out today. I was almost implicated and killed. After a while, Huang Song thought of something and said to them mysteriously, Do you believe that Lu Shi is a woman? Fengju and Cheng Jing were speechless. Had their lord been bullied by his mistress until his brain was damaged? The forces that were more familiar with Jiang Pengji were all so shocked by the news that they looked up at the sun. Did the sun rise from the west today? After the initial shock, everyone thought of another problem. Since Lu Shi was a woman, would the soldiers and counselors under her command still be as loyal as before? Many people secretly waited to watch a good show, such as a certain soldier or counselor who was dissatisfied with their lord's gender and resolutely rebelled. In the end, they were greatly disappointed. Jiang Pengji did what she was supposed to do. Except for a few generals who didn't know the truth and gathered together in a daze, the others were not affected at all. As for the ordinary soldiers in the military camp, they had received favors or assistance from the female camp. They had also fought side by side with the soldiers of the female camp and killed the enemy together. They had a revolutionary comradeship and friendship with each other. Now that the stalwart lord had become a valiant woman, it was not so difficult to accept. Of course, there was another reason why they could accept the reality so quickly. Meng Hun and the others had increased the intensity of training the soldiers. All the soldiers were exhausted and had no extra energy to gossip. The news that should have set off a monstrous storm was quietly accepted by ordinary people. The news of the dismemberment with the ceremonial tablet flowed from the mouths of the officials to the marketplace and spread like wildfire. The people were not surprised that a woman could become the magistrate of Wanzhou. Instead, they were shocked that such a heroic young talent was actually a woman. Chapter 757. When Jiang Pengji stepped into the backyard, Huijun had been waiting by the door for a long time. With a gentle and appropriate smile on her face, she knelt down and bowed respectfully. "Thank you for your hard work, Lang Jun. How was the court meeting today?" Huijun stood up and reached out to take the official's hat and ceremonial tablet that Jiang Pengji had taken off. Her gaze was gentle, like a pool of limpid spring water. Even though she used makeup to reduce the beauty of her face, her gentle and virtuous temperament still tickled the hearts of the viewers in the live broadcast room. Guojia is not a country. I really envy men in ancient times. No wonder they like to hug each other. Every day when they get home from work, they can receive gentle greetings from their wives. Just this alone can make a man throw away the worries of the day. Oh yes, I am a girl. Sun Yu is not a gohi. Upstairs, you can work harder to earn money to support your family and let your boyfriend stay at home to take care of his wife and children. Jiasu is not Jiayu. I second Lord Sun's suggestion. The audience had all seen Huijuan's true appearance. To put it bluntly, Huijuan's appearance could instantly kill all the female celebrities in the entertainment industry. In terms of looks alone, she was definitely an unshakable goddess-like figure. According to the comments of the audience in the live broadcast room, Huijuan's face had become the template for plastic surgery hospitals in South Korea. Female stars in the entertainment industry had followed suit, which showed how outstanding Huijuan's appearance was. There were some twists and turns, but it went well. Huijun was startled. She lowered her head and asked, "Lang Jun, why must you restore your identity at this time?" Jiang Pengji explained, "This is an opportunity. The power isn't too great, and it can cause the world to object, but it's not small either, and it can be bullied and humiliated. If I wait until my forces continue to grow and reveal my true identity, it will undoubtedly cause the enemy forces to band together and attack me together." Huijuan's expression was gloomy as she rolled up her sleeves. "Your servant is ashamed that I was unable to continue helping Lang Jun." Jiang Pengji laughed and rubbed her hair. "Your previous life was too bitter. Enjoy your next life in peace. I will take care of these matters properly. There is no need for you to continue sacrificing yourself." The honey trap was just an expedient measure. It was a fair deal between Jiang Pengji and Huijun. Now that the transaction had been settled, she could not push Huijun, who had already escaped from the pit of fire, back into it. "If you're bored, I'll assign you a mission when we get back to Wanzhou. That way, you won't have to work as a maid all day." Huijun smiled faintly and teased, "It's already a great blessing to be able to serve Lang Jun. I even snatched this job from your handmaidens." "I didn't know I was so popular." Jiang Pengji secretly rolled her eyes and mocked herself. "There are many things that you don't know." Huijun followed a step behind Jiang Pengji. "By the way, since you've recovered your true identity, do you want to adjust your attire? I don't think it's a good idea to dress as a man all the time. Oh, prepare a few sets of women's clothing. Something simple and plain will do." Whether it was men's or women's clothing, Jiang Pengji did not have a preference, as long as it was convenient for her to move around. Huijun was already prepared. She brought out a plate from the back hall with 2 sets of women's clothing stacked on top of it. "I made this in my spare time. Why don't you try it and see how big it is?" When Jiang Pengji saw the style and size of the clothes, she knew that Huijun had specially made them for her. Okay. Fortunately, there was not much difference between men's and women's clothing in ancient times. It was Jiang Pengji's first time wearing women's clothing, so she was not at a loss. She untied the heavy white cloth that was wrapped around her chest and released her long-suppressed cleavage. She took a deep breath and felt that the air was fresh. Jiang Pengji looked down and muttered, "It's wise to recover my identity now. Otherwise, I'll suffocate to death one day." Because of the optimization of his body, Lu Shi's skinny body grew very well. Not only was he tall, but his cleavage was also developing well. Hui Jun was very well prepared. She had even prepared a private item, such as a dudu. Jiang Pengji raised her hand and massaged her cleavage, which was rarely relaxed. It seemed that it was necessary to play with her bra. After all, she could not treat herself badly. Not long after, Jiang Pengji was dressed neatly. "It looks a little weird," she tugged at her sleeves. The overall color of the women's clothing was green. It was not too lively, but it did not look too old-fashioned either. It was just that there was a strange feeling of a boss in women's clothing. Looking at Jiang Pengji's attire, Hui Jun, who was waiting outside, laughed out loud. "Lang Jun, you haven't changed your hairstyle." Naturally, it was awkward to wear a woman's attire while wearing a man's hairstyle. Jiang Pengji had been in this world for so many years, but she could only comb her hair into a ponytail. Naturally, she had to let others help her with her hairstyle. Hui Jun did not help her comb her hair into a luxurious and complicated hairstyle. Instead, she chose the most common hairstyle. Other than that, there were no additional accessories. Not to mention a hawksbill hairpin or a buyao. She did not even wear a woman's dress. She did not wear any exquisite jewelry. It's too plain and clean. Even the maidservants who serve you wear 1 or 2 plain silver hairpins. As Hui Jun spoke, she raised her hand to help Jiang Pengji fix the shape of her brows. She looked less fierce and more gentle. Jiang Pengji closed her eyes and allowed Hui Jun to move around on her face. But Lang Jun is not suitable for those luxurious decorations. Lang Jun is different from those women who like to look good. She wanted to choose a pair of pearl earrings for Jiang Pengji to wear, but in the end, she helplessly realized that Jiang Pengji did not have piercings. Jiang Pengji opened her eyes and looked at the heroic girl in the bronze mirror. The corners of her mouth twitched. Finally, she did not have the weird feeling of being a boss in women's clothing. Lang Jun's lips are a little pale. A little rouge will make them look better. That's good. Jiang Pengji opened the streaming room. 150,000 viewers swarmed in. Then, Mei Ernyang, where's the streamer? Where did the streamer go? Wither into dust. Something big has happened. The streamer is missing. The viewers in the streaming room subconsciously looked for the familiar figure of the young man. They were shocked to find that the streamer was not in the streaming room. Huan Zixingchen, wait, the lady beside Miss Hui Jun, is she the streamer? Everyone stared at Jiang Pengji's face carefully. It was indeed the streamer's face. And Mo Lingyin, after following the streaming for so many years, I finally see the streamer in women's clothing. I feel like I have no regrets in this life. Hao San Xinshui, I thought I would see the King Kong Barbie Neza version of the streamer. I didn't expect her to be so pretty. Jiang Pengji did not look like a man. It was just that her appearance was more heroic. When she wore women's clothing and combed her hair into a bun, no one would suspect that she was a man. In a split second, the bullet screen of the entire streaming room was filled with exclamation marks and horrified emojis. The corner of Jiang Pengji's eye twitched. Only then did she resist the urge to forcibly close the streaming room. Hui Jun, do you think I will scare people if I go out like this? Hui Jun covered her lips and smiled faintly. Lang Jun, you look suave and elegant in men's clothing. You look heroic in women's clothing. How will you scare people? Chapter 758. Ah, my neck hurts, and there's no more tea. Feng Zhen put down his pen and used his fist to massage his aching neck. He moved his toes. After sitting for so long, he felt like his legs didn't belong to him anymore. Yangtze rummaged through a pile of bamboo slips and said without looking up, "There's no more tea. Just ask the servant girl in the pantry to refill it." Feng Zhen smiled meaningfully. That's great. The servant girl in the pantry is good at massaging. Yangtze looked down and said, "You're really not afraid of trouble. Who knows what these servants used to be?" The imperial city of Chenzhou had been through a disaster. Many officials had been taken captive, leaving behind many concubines, female slaves, maids, and servants. The mansion they were living in had been left behind by someone else. The maids they were using had been found later. Fengzhen said, "I'm just letting her massage my shoulders to relax. I'm not doing anything else." To be honest, ever since Fengzhen became Jiang Pengji's subordinate, he had been much more restrained. In the past, he slept with women every day. Now, he couldn't even touch a girl's hand for months, let alone develop a relationship. Compared to before, his life now was like that of a delicate monk with few desires. He was about to weep for himself when light footsteps came from outside. The shadow in the hall slowly approached. Fengzhen didn't even raise his head as he said, "Go fill up the tea on the table and give me a shoulder massage. Use the same amount of strength as yesterday." After a while, the other party didn't move. "You want me to fill your tea and massage your shoulders?" A familiar voice came from above his head. The tone of the voice carried a hint of indescribable warning. Fengzhen didn't recognize it and immediately laughed. "What? Is it hard for you to fill my tea and massage my shoulders?" At that moment, the comments in the live stream room all felt sorry for Fengzhen and hoped that the streamer would teach him a lesson. Wahao AI GG. Warning ahead. Your dissolute Prince Charming Fengzhen is about to be beaten by the streamer. Sui Feng Xiao say, "I really want to grab Feng Longzi's shoulders and shake him. Isn't it good to be alive? Why do one die?" Zhang Sunwu Shuang. Yeah, why do you want to die? Let the streamer fill his tea. I think the streamer will pinch his chin and pour the whole pot of hot water down his throat. Let the host massage his shoulders? No. Was he sure he wouldn't break his collarbone? Feng Zi, sure, I dare to pinch you, but I'm afraid you don't have the guts to let me pinch you. You seem to be living a good life. You're working, yet you still have the leisure to let a maid serve you and massage your shoulders. Jiang Pengji took 2 steps forward, and her snow-white socks came into view. Fengzhen's heart skipped a beat when he heard the other party call him by his surname and courtesy name. His voice had even changed to the familiar tone he was used to. He slowly raised his head like a criminal awaiting his death sentence. She bent her knees slightly and squatted down to meet his gaze. "Zisher, do you want to try my cooking?" Fengzhen was so shocked that he leaned back. His movement was a little too big, and he fell to the ground. He hurriedly got up and said seriously, "Greetings, my lord." Jiang Pengji smiled and asked him, "You haven't answered my question." Fengzhen's expression immediately turned bitter, as if he had eaten a whole basket of bitter gourds. What the hell was going on? If he had known that the woman who came in was not a maid, but Jiang Pengji, he wouldn't have ordered her around unless he had a death wish. However, his lord dressed in women's clothes didn't seem so unsightly to the eyes. She was much better than the burly man dressed in women's clothes that Fengzhen had imagined. Yang Si, who had been watching the entire scene, couldn't help but burst out laughing. Fengzhen was reaping what he sowed. He deserved to be shocked. Yang Jingrong, you're so sincere in watching people embarrass themselves. Fengzhen was a little uncomfortable at first. He felt that it was a little weird to face his lord dressed in women's clothes, but the urge to criticize Yang Si won out. Yang Si supported his cheek with one hand and laughed. If you hadn't given someone something to use against you, who would have watched you? You're too careless in making friends. Yang Si clearly knew that Jiang Pengji was coming, but he didn't even warn him. Instead, he coldly watched him embarrass himself. Fengzhen wanted to say something, but a servant's voice came from outside. "My lord, County Chief Huang's wife is here to visit." Jiang Pengji was surprised. "County Chief Huang's wife? Who is it?" Yang Si thought about it and said, "It should be Huang Song's wife. I don't know why she's here." Jiang Pengji was shocked. "Huang Bogeo has a wife? When did he get married? Why didn't he inform us?" Since Huang Song's wife had come to visit, Jiang Pengji naturally couldn't stop her from entering. She could only receive her personally. Yang Si said, "My lord, do you need to dress up a little more? If you receive a guest like this, it's too plain." Jiang Pengji said indifferently, "Your lord is not an ordinary woman in the backyard. Who would see me dressed up? How improper would that be?" After she finished speaking, she strode away. Her one step was faster than an ordinary woman's 2 or 3. Looking at her height, she was tall and slender. Ordinary men would feel pressured, let alone those petite women. Yangtze looked at her and felt a faint stomachache. He felt that his lord wasn't wearing the wrong clothes, but had clearly reincarnated into the wrong body. Huang Song's wife was settled in the living room. When Jiang Pengji went over, she found two maids with knives at their waists standing outside the door. She didn't even frown. She walked in with a natural expression and saw a young girl with a bright and beautiful face sitting on the lower right. She was young and had a woman's bun. She should be Huang Song's wife. Yi Cho Chang. Oh my God, Huang Song's wife looks like a girl in her first year of high school. She's actually married. Jiang Pengji's thoughts coincided with the audience's. Huang Song's wife was still a young girl, but she already had the steadiness of an adult. Your servant, Huang Qi greets the magistrate of Liuzhou. When Jiang Pengji sat down, Huang Song's wife bowed to her. The four maids with knives behind her also bowed. Jiang Pengji discovered that not only did the maids carry knives, but Huang Song's wife also practiced martial arts. She had two knives on her waist belt. TSK. She was a real hot pepper. She wondered if Huang Song was usually afraid of this young wife. Bogeo and I are close friends. You're treating me like an outsider with such great respect. Compared to Huang Song's wife, who was dressed up and had no lack of hawksbill hairpins, Jiang Pengji seemed especially gloomy. However, the auras of the two were different. Even if Jiang Pengji didn't wear any makeup, she could still bring great pressure to the other party. Magistrate of Liuzhou, save my husband at the court meeting. I can't skip this courtesy. Jiang Pengji responded with an "oh" and said, "It's nothing. Did Lady Qi specially come over to thank me?" "Yes, but I don't know what you like. If there's anything inappropriate, please forgive me." Jiang Pengji glanced at the gifts placed below. They were all high-quality rouge, face powder, and cloth jewelry. She couldn't help but be speechless. She knew the reason for her visit. "Thank you very much." This time, it was Lady Qi's turn to be surprised. "Aren't you angry, Magistrate?" Chapter 759. Lady Qi's face was full of admiration. She said sincerely, "Governor, you're really not an ordinary woman. You're not an ordinary woman either." Jiang Pengji lowered her eyelids and glanced at the pile of gifts. She then glanced at the maids with knives behind Lady Qi. The audience in the streaming room was dumbfounded. Even through the screen, they could still feel that the atmosphere in the picture was a little strange. "Yuetong, well, can anyone tell me what Huang Song's lowly wife means? I feel like my IQ is not enough." If it was a mockery, her gift of rouge and jewelry would not cause the streamer any trouble. If it was a show of goodwill, I feel a little strange if it were other women giving rouge, face powder, and cloth jewelry would certainly not be so out of place. However, if it were Jiang Pengji, even the dullest audience would feel that something was wrong. Rouge, face powder, cloth jewelry. These things that girls like seem to be very different from the streamer's style. Xiuhua Rimadu. Haha, maybe she's jealous? Think about it. When the streamer and Huang Song were together, how many times did they go to the brothel? They held a little beauty in their arms, listened to songs and watched dances, and looked like good brothers. If I were Huang Song's wife, I would definitely feel uncomfortable. However, giving rouge, face powder, and so on is something that I've seen too much of. I feel that her actions are particularly refreshing. Many people think that this is just a girl's jealousy. It's not a big deal at all. However, there are still many viewers who disagree. Xinjia. I don't agree that Huang Song's wife's methods are refreshing. She seems reckless and headstrong, but she's actually very shrewd. It's not as simple as jealousy. It's provocation and testing. Have you ever seen a maid carry a knife when visiting someone's house or thanking them? As for the gifts given by Huang Song's wife, there's definitely nothing wrong with them on a woman. The streamer said that they're all good things. Can you say that these gifts are not thoughtful? But the problem is that the streamer is not an ordinary woman. Using rouge as a gift is very provocative. Lao Cg Lianmeng. For an inappropriate example, Prime Minister Zhuge gave Sima women's clothes before the battle. Do you think this is appropriate? Anyone with a discerning eye knows that it's not appropriate to give the streamer rouge and face powder. It's better to change it to medicinal herbs and jade. It's not outstanding, but it's also not wrong. Madame Huang's song must have known this. Otherwise, she wouldn't have asked the streamer, "Are you angry?" She must have done this on purpose. On purpose? The live stream viewers were stunned. If no one had reminded them, they wouldn't have noticed the detail of carrying a knife. Indeed, who would be armed to the teeth when going out to thank a guest? Most of the audience were on the main streamer's side. They would subconsciously protect Jiang Pengji's interests. Their impression of Huang Song's wife was a little worse. Madame Qi shook her head in shame and waved her hand, motioning for the 4 maids behind her to retreat. After the maid retreated, Madame Qi raised her hand to remove the knife from her waist and pushed it a few feet forward, away from where she could touch it. "Prefecture Governor, you're praising me too much. In your eyes, I'm just a vulgar woman who only knows how to be jealous, right?" Jiang Pengji calmly watched her movements. Why does Madame say that? If Madame only knew how to be jealous, then the things that were sent to her door would not be good. It would be better to casually pick some ordinary things. Since Madame dares to bring these things to your door, isn't it because you're certain that you can achieve your goal and retreat unscathed? She clearly knew that Jiang Pengji could dismember people with an ivory baton, yet she still had the guts to come and test her. This could no longer be summed up as being bold. However, being bold did not mean being reckless. In Jiang Pengji's opinion, Madame Qi was quite scheming. The livestream viewers felt that Madame Qi was provoking her because of Huang's song, but Jiang Pengji didn't think so. The purpose of this person's visit was to test her more than to provoke her. Jealousy was just an added bonus. To put it bluntly, in the face of a gift from Madame Qi, there was no woman who would not like it. If Jiang Pengji acted like she liked it very much, it could only show that she was an ordinary woman who liked colors. A woman who loved beauty and was somewhat vain was naturally easy to deal with because this was a weakness. If she flew into a rage, Madame Qi would not be surprised. This showed that Jiang Pengji's future achievements would be limited. Even if she was already the prefecture governor, she was limited by her identity as a woman and did not have enough magnanimity and foresight. How far could she go in the future? It was even more reassuring. In the end, Jiang Pengji's reaction was neither of the above two. She was not angry. Instead, she gladly accepted the gift. Her purpose was to give it to a beautiful woman, to present Buddha with borrowed flowers. Not only did it show her tolerance and magnanimity, but it also helped to save Madame Qi's face. The more she did this, the more Madame Qi did not dare to look down on her. So she ordered the maid to retreat and unsheathed the knife at her waist to show that she was on good terms with her. She was sure that even if Jiang Pengji was a woman, her advantages would not be diminished because of this, and her future achievements would not stop at being the prefecture governor of Wanzhou. She must be a formidable opponent. Madame Qi said, "Compared to my petty cleverness, your magnanimity and magnanimity are what make people tremble in fear." Jiang Pengji used a declarative sentence. "I don't think Huang Song asked you to prepare these gifts. Bogeo doesn't know about this," Madame Qi said. "This is my decision. I hope this will not affect the friendship between you and Bogeo." "I guess so. Even if Huang Bogeo had the intention to test me, he wouldn't have the guts." Regardless of whether there would be a conflict with Huang Song in the future, at least for now, they were still friends who could talk to each other. Jiang Pengji smiled and teased. "Madam, aren't you worried?" Madame Qi twirled her handkerchief and rolled her eyes. "I was a little worried before I came, but I'm not worried now." She smiled guiltily and said, "I know that Bogeo isn't a very good person, but I admire him from head to toe. The two of us are husband and wife who drank the nuptial wine. In my eyes, he is the best husband in the world. However, your magnanimity and magnanimity are completely different from the women in the world who are in love. If it was a man, I might have fallen in love with someone else. He's so outstanding, so I naturally wouldn't think highly of Bogeo. I won't be delusional and think that Bogeo can attract your attention." Jiang Pengji laughed involuntarily. "If he heard what you said, he would fight me to the death." She asked the maid outside to put away Madame Qi's gifts. Madame Qi asked her with interest. Just now, you said that you wanted to present Buddha with borrowed flowers. I wonder which beauty is so blessed. In my opinion, all the women in the world are unparalleled beauties. How can this be considered a blessing? It's how it should be. When Madame Qi heard this, a smile bloomed on her face, and she complained half-truthfully. I feel that it's a pity that the governor is a woman, but I'm also a little glad. Why do you say that? If the governor is a man, how fortunate would it be for the woman who can make you hold her in the palm of your hand and cherish her? But how sad would it be for those women who adore you but can't get their hands on you? Madame Qi said, fortunately, the governor is a woman. Chapter 760. Although there was some friction at the beginning, the conversation was still relatively pleasant. Seeing that the sky outside was slightly dark, Lady Qi said with a smile, I had a pleasant conversation with you. We hit it off at first sight. I was so happy that I forgot the time. If I delay any longer, I'm afraid I'll delay your official business. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Please do as you please, my lady. The security in the city is unstable now. If anything goes wrong on the way, I won't be able to explain it to Bogeo. Jiang Pengji arranged for someone to escort Lady Qi back. Huang Bogeo is really lucky to have a good wife. Hui Jun was a little happy when she received the generous gift. When she heard that it was from Huang Song's wife, she was immediately displeased. Good wife. I can't tell. If it weren't for Longjuan's magnanimity and not bothering with such a vulgar woman, I'm afraid she would have caused trouble for Chief Huang. Hui Jun frowned. She said that she came to thank Lang Jun for saving her husband, but her actions aren't like that. Who would come to thank you fully armed? Those maids all seem to be trained. It's not a problem for them to deal with one or two ordinary, burly men. Jiang Pengji laughed involuntarily and raised her hand to poke Huijuan's furrowed brows. Seeing that Hui Jun exclaimed and raised her hand to cover the space between her brows, Jiang Pengji said, Do you also think that Huang Song's wife has no guts? She's not reckless, but she's not worthy of Longjuan's praise. Hui Jun thought of those precious items and frowned even more fiercely. Lang Jun was different from ordinary women. He was more outstanding than ordinary men. Why would he need to deal with cosmetics? I think you're quite jealous. Jiang Pengji smiled helplessly and shook her head. The matter of her giving rouge and cosmetics depends on how others interpret it. Don't forget that it's also a big trend for men to wear cosmetics nowadays. Not only do women use it, but men use it even more. Strictly speaking, there's nothing wrong with her gift this time. The fault lies in the fact that your Lang Jun is a woman and not a man. That's why there's a dispute. Hui Jun snorted softly, feeling unsettled. Is she certain that Lang Jun won't be able to do anything? What else? Jiang Pengji said, If I were to go against the grain and insist that she gave me rouge and cosmetics to humiliate me, wouldn't that mean that I also mind my identity as a daughter? Otherwise, why would he be so angry? What's more, according to the current fashion, even men giving each other cosmetics was considered elegant, let alone this matter. If I get angry, I'll just be a joke to the people outside. This was the best way to deal with it. I still don't like her, Hui Jun said. I'm angry. She is Huang Song's wife. Naturally, she will protect Huang Song for free. Jiang Pengji smiled. You are my family. Naturally, you will protect me. Let's go and see what good things Madame Qi has said. If the goods aren't good enough, I'll blackmail Huang Song for some. This matter quickly reached the ears of Feng Zhen and Yang Si, a visitor with a knife. Who on earth is this Madame Qi? How dare she be so bold? Feng Zhen frowned at first, but when he heard that his lord had successfully settled the matter, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief and began to pay attention to the gossip. Yang Si thought about it carefully and said, The surname is Qi. Could it be the Qi family whose ancestors had 2 military officers? The Grand Commandant was in charge of martial arts. His salary was 10,000 stones, and he had a golden seal and purple ribbon. The Qi family was a martial family. During the Great Xia dynasty, they had produced 2 military officers in a row. At the end of the Great Xia dynasty, the Qi family was dragged into the battle for the throne. They lost by a single move, and the entire family was liquidated by the new emperor. The Qi family decisively cut off their tail to protect themselves. Although their vitality was greatly damaged, at least their legacy was not broken. However, it was said that the Qi family had few descendants in the past 2 generations. It was a little difficult to pass on their legacy. Fengzhen rolled up his sleeves and sighed. Who knows? If she's really a woman from the Qi family, it's not surprising that she did this. Yang Si lit the oil lamps in the hall and added 2 more lamps to his table so that he wouldn't have to spend too much effort reading official documents. Huang Song is really lucky. Yang Si took out a roll of bamboo slips. It's a pity that our Lord can't take this shortcut. Others could use marriage to strengthen themselves, but their Lord was a woman. If she wanted to do this, she could only let someone marry into her family. Was it something that decent people would be willing to do? Even if it was an ordinary family, as long as they didn't starve to death, they wouldn't easily marry into their family. Although their Lord had done very well, her identity as a woman was still a shortcoming. Therefore, she needed to do her best to smooth out the injustice. Fairness was never given out by outsiders. One could only rely on oneself to fight for it. Fengzhen twirled the beard that he had just begun to grow. She doesn't need it either. She had been able to go from poverty to where she was now without relying on Lu Shi. Now that she had restored her original form and was in control of Wanzhou, how could it be more difficult than before? Elsewhere, Huang Song happened to find out by chance that his lady had prepared a thank-you gift for Jiang Pingji. He was instantly scared out of his wits. Gift of rouge, face powder, cloth jewelry. Huang Song restrained himself again and again before he managed to suppress the urge to lift the person up by the collar. Was this the lady's own idea, or was it instigated by you wicked servants? How could the servants dare to say that they had instigated it? The entire backyard was Lady Qi's world. Not to mention Huang Song, the male master. The other servants were so disciplined that they didn't dare to say anything. Yes, it was the lady's own decision. Huang Song was like a deflated doll. He felt like his whole body was about to go limp. All of you can leave. Just as he was about to send them out, he remembered something and called them back. How long has the lady been out? It's been about 4 hours. 4 hours? Huang Song looked at the sky, which was almost completely dark. His face suddenly darkened. The lady hasn't returned yet? The servant replied, She hasn't returned yet. Huang Song was anxious and said, Prepare the horse immediately. He was quite confident in Jiang Pingji. She was magnanimous. He also had confidence in his lady. Although she had a temper, she wouldn't go overboard. However, if the 2 of them were to meet, Huang Song wouldn't have the slightest bit of confidence. The coachman had just brought the horse over. Before Huang Song could mount the horse, Lady Qi's carriage had already leisurely stopped in front of the door. Madam, are you all right? Huang Song hurriedly went up to greet her. What can happen to me? The governor of Liuzhou isn't a jackal. He won't eat me. Lady Qi glanced at him as if she was rebuking him. Her young and beautiful face had a hint of sharpness. I'm afraid that you'll hurt each other. Huang Song swallowed his words and said, I'm worried about the lady. Lanting's temperament has always been difficult to understand. When I heard that you sent a pile of rouge and face powder just now, I almost broke out in a sweat. Lady Qi rolled her eyes at Huang Song. I'm not giving her a menstrual band. It's just some high-quality rouge and face powder. Both men and women can use it, and it doesn't violate any taboo. If she accepts it magnanimously, not only will it help both parties maintain their dignity, but it will also become a good story. If outsiders know about it, at most they'll say that I'm a petty woman and praise her for being magnanimous and extraordinary. If she even cares about this, it shows how broad-minded she is. A narrow-minded woman, no matter what her starting point was now, would have a very difficult time in the future. As long as Jiang Pengji wasn't stupid, she would definitely not make the wrong move. Huang Song was choked and speechless. Chapter 761. How is Bogeo's relationship with Lu Prefecture's governor? Madame Qi took off her cloak to keep out the cold and handed it to the maid. We have a good relationship. We used to go together, Huang Song said casually. When his eyes met his wife's stern eyes, he immediately swallowed the rest of his words. It was not convenient to talk about their romantic past. Anyway, we have a good personal relationship. Fortunately, Lady Qi didn't care about what he didn't finish. I think that Lu Prefecture's overseer is extraordinarily ambitious. After today's conversation, I feel that her restoring her identity as a woman may not be passive, but active. Madame Qi sat down, picked up the tea that the maid had poured for her, and took a sip to moisten her mouth. Her words were astonishing. Huang Song frowned and said, "That's impossible. Lanting's identity is well hidden. If it weren't for today's incident, I'm afraid I wouldn't have discovered it. Furthermore, what good was there in restoring his identity? If Lanting had been a man, he would have been conferred the title of governor of Wanzhou. With her father's power, he would have been able to sit firmly in the north. The imperial court was on the brink of death, and it was clear that there was no hope for them to be saved. This was merely the final radiance of the setting sun. Other than causing trouble for him, what other benefits did she gain from returning to her female identity? If you hide it, your future will be limitless. Why bother? As for the marriage of children, compared to his future prospects, this was not a problem at all. As for having children, she could find a man she liked in private. Wouldn't it be easy for her to give birth to a child for herself? As for the father of the child, he could either keep him or kill him. There were ways to deal with him without leaving any traces. If it wasn't for someone else exposing her or her own stupidity, how could she have discovered her true identity? How would they find out? Who would suspect that the playmate they drank with all day was a woman? Whether it was his words, actions, or style of doing things, he couldn't see any flaws at all. As for Jiang Pingji's appearance, according to the current trend, there were many men who were more effeminate than her. Lady Qi raised her eyelids and rolled her eyes at her husband. This is a woman's intuition. What do you know? Today, he had a pleasant conversation with the governor of Liuzhou. He did not feel the slightest bit unhappy that his identity had been exposed, nor did he feel confused or hesitant about the outside world. On the contrary, he seemed to have been prepared. If that's really the case, then this Lu province overseer's ambition is definitely greater than I imagined. Faced with his wife's speculation, Huang Song only gave one response. "Oh," Lady Qi said. "Oh what? Give me some reaction." Huang Song laughed and said, "What kind of reaction can your husband give?" Lanting was ambitious. This was not the first time he had found out about this. Their current relationship was still fine, so they could talk about the future in the future. I can't cut ties with Lanting just because she's too ambitious, right? Madame Qi said, "Even so, you have to be prepared. You have to keep an eye on Haozhou. This place is located at the border between the north and the south. Based on the current development of the two of them, there would definitely be a day when their interests would collide." Huang Song smiled and raised his hand to pull his wife into his arms. The couple's posture was intimate, as if they were hugging a doll. He said in a low voice, "It's not that I don't understand Madame's thoughts, but now is not the time. Lanting is powerful and is entrenched in the north. However, that is only on the surface. In the next few years, I will only cooperate with her. There will be no conflict. It's too early for you to worry." "Why?" Madame Qi was surprised. Huang Song said in a low voice, "In the north, there are not only the Lu father and son, but also the northern borderline. As long as the northern borderline existed, Lanting's power would be restricted to the northern borderline. Starting a dispute with her because of me would be courting death. She will peacefully develop to the north, and I will develop from the north to the south. We will form an alliance and not interfere with each other. When she deals with the northern borderline, we will be completely at odds with each other. Do you understand?" Personal friendship was personal, and official business was official business. Not only did Jiang Pingji see it clearly, but Huang Song also understood it. United, they were friends. Divided, they were enemies. Whether they were enemies or friends depended on their standpoint. Originally, I thought that Lanting's chances of winning against the forces of the northern borderline were not high. Now that I look at it, I feel that the chances are 50-50. Huang Song lowered his eyes slightly and said, "In terms of magnanimity alone, there are very few in the world who can surpass her. Unfortunately, she is not a man." Madame Chi raised her hand and pinched the soft flesh on his waist. She bared her canine teeth and said, "What's wrong with being a woman? Can't women do big things?" "Madam, I didn't mean that. It hurts, it hurts. Let go. My flesh is about to turn purple." Huang Song begged for mercy repeatedly. Madame Chi only let go after a while. "Then do you hope that she can win against the northern borderline?" "The northern borderline is an outsider. How many innocent people have been slaughtered? Naturally, I hope that Lanting can win. If she is unable to do so, I will definitely do my best to help her." Huang Song secretly sucked in a breath of cold air and rubbed the area pitifully. Madame Chi's grip was still so strong. Women were really not to be trifled with. As he rubbed, he complained, "Sigh, Madame has caused unnecessary trouble this time. I will have to spend some of my private money again." Madame Chi's ears pricked up. "Are you saying that I have caused unnecessary trouble for you?" Huang Song bit her earlobe and said with a smile, "If you had given me something else, others would only think that I have a good personal relationship with Lanting. It would be normal for Madame to visit and thank me. But now, I have given her rouge and face powder. Even if Lanting doesn't mind, it is difficult to guarantee that outsiders will not maliciously gossip and drive a wedge between us. To be safe, I have to personally visit her tomorrow and give her a double gift. I have to be serious." Madame Chi pouted, but did not say anything. Huang Song continued, "Otherwise, if others deliberately humiliate Lanting in the future and ask the lady of the inner house to step in for everything, guess what will happen? Not only will she deal with those people, but she will also deal with your husband. Just in case, I will spend money to avert disaster." It had to be said that Huang Song still had some understanding of Jiang Pingji. Madame Chi said, "That's fine. I will go to the storeroom again and pick some good ones." The couple had not seen each other for a long time, and it was far better than being newlyweds. That night, they were inseparable. As soon as they stopped, the flustered voice of the maid came from outside. At the same time, Jiang Pingji, who was about to rest, also received similar news. "The corpse is gone." Jiang Pingji wore a cloak to ward off the cold and held a roll of bamboo slips in her hand. The servant who was reporting to her turned pale. The servant trembled and said, "Yes, I heard that a gust of demonic wind blew past and the remains of the corpse disappeared. His lord was the main force in killing the demon. It was difficult to guarantee that the demon would not cause trouble for his lord after it was resurrected." Thinking that there would be a demon secretly watching the mansion, the servant's face turned ashen. "If it's gone, then it's gone. Is there a need to make such a fuss?" Jiang Pengji waved her hand to dismiss the servant. Looking at the light on the lamp, Jiang Pengji reached out and teased the flame. "It has been killed 3 times and resurrected 3 times. I suppose that part of the popularity points stored in the system have been consumed," she muttered in a low voice, her eyes filled with a cold light. Chapter 762. How could Jiang Pengji not know that it was dangerous to let the time traveler run wild? As long as the hidden danger was not eliminated, not only would Jiang Pengji face the danger of being assassinated, but the people around her could also be implicated. A time traveler with no bottom line, a greedy system that wanted to see the world in chaos, and a scheming, greedy system that harbored evil intentions towards Jiang Pengji. Just based on this, Jiang Pengji could not allow them to live freely and cause trouble for her. Weeds would grow again if the roots were not removed. However, she was a rational hunter. She knew what to do to successfully catch her prey. No matter how anxious she was, she had to endure it. She could not let her prey discover her true intentions in advance. When hunting, one naturally had to kill in one shot. Once she made her move, she could not give her prey the slightest chance to escape. Tormenting the time traveler and the system was just a warm-up before the hunt. Step by step, she gave her prey the greatest pressure, made them run for their lives, and exhausted them to a certain extent. When the time was right, it would be her time to strike. The system in the time traveler's body was different from the one in Jiang Pengji's body. The two came from the same source, and their starting points were exactly the same. However, with different hosts, their growth paths were also different. Jiang Pengji knew about the hidden spark in the system from the beginning. She was always on guard against it and limited its growth. To use an analogy, Jiang Pengji's system was a pitiful little person whose food was deducted. She only ate one meal a day, her nutrition could not keep up, and her growth was seriously delayed. She was 8 meters tall and weighed less than 40 kilograms. She was skinny and had no ability to fight back. What about the system around the time traveler? Under the guidance of the system, the time traveler started a live stream. For the reward given by the system, the time traveler's bottom line became lower and lower. In the end, she did not even have a bottom line. With such a hard-working and willing host, how could the system earn less points of popularity? Compared to the pitiful system on Jiang Pengji's side, the time traveler's system was very happy. Every day, it ate seafood, and every meal was a feast with 108 dishes. It had to eat 8 to 10 meals a day. Its digestive system could not take it, and it was already overweight. Jiang Pengji tormented the system just to slim it down and find ways to consume its points of popularity. When he had slimmed down to a certain extent, and there were not many points of popularity left, it would be the best time for Jiang Pengji to close the net. If she could imprison both subsystems, she would like to see how big of a wave the system could cause. Teasing the dancing flames, Jiang Pengji smiled coldly. When the truth was revealed, she would let the Smartaliki system know who was the one scheming against whom. 2 flowers blossomed, one on each side. The woman had disguised herself as an old woman. Her body had been dismembered alive by Jiang Pengji using 5 ivory batons. She had died a miserable death. Host, this is the 3rd time. The system's voice was exceptionally cold, with a strong sense of reproach. If it weren't for Jiang Pengji's mischief that bound the system to the physical body, it would have long given up on this incompetent host. In just 1 or 2 months, it had died 3 times in the hands of the same person, and each time was more tragic than the last, which made the 3 corpse god furious. The old woman's soul was pulled into the system space by the system and restored to the appearance of the beautiful woman in the red dress. Her face was extremely pale, and her eyes were still filled with panic and fear that hadn't dissipated. Although it was only for a moment, the severe pain of being dismembered still brought indescribable pain and trauma to her soul. The system's reproach made her slightly come back to her senses, and she secretly licked her full red lips. Because of the system's guidance, she never thought that she was controlled by the system. What was the system? What was the host? Just from the word itself, it was obvious who was in the dominant position. In her mind, the system was just a string of data. In the past, the woman in the red dress could tolerate the system's criticism because of their common interests. Now that she had suffered setbacks one after another, she was also annoyed. The 3rd time is the 3rd time. Who gave me the rotten idea? System, you said that exposing Lu Shi's identity as a woman would teach her a lesson. Now that it failed, you put all the blame on me. Who do you think you are? You're just data that isn't even a person. Don't put on airs in front of me. If you continue to provoke me, I'll go on strike now. Find another host if you can. The woman in the red dress was so angry that she said these words out of anger. She didn't know that her angry words just hit the system's sore spot. F***CK. If I could change the host, why would I still argue with this idiot here? At first, the system chose the woman in the red dress as its host because it saw that she was easy to control. She had the intelligence of an ordinary person, was a little greedy, liked to reap without sowing, had a lot of unrealistic daydreams in her head, was vain, bullied the weak, and feared the strong. The system liked this kind of host the most. She wasn't too stupid, but she wasn't smart either. She had weaknesses that could be easily controlled and made her the most obedient puppet. Now, it seemed that she was too stupid. She was incompetent, and even with the system's help, she was still beaten half to death by Jiang Pengji. The system was not afraid of this host at all. It had cooperated with her for more than 20 years and knew her true colors too well. It sneered, "Host, according to the original contract, you can unilaterally go on strike at will. Aren't you afraid of electric shock punishment or obliteration?" When a woman in the red dress heard the words electric shock punishment and obliteration, her body subconsciously trembled. "I haven't done anything wrong now. Why do you have to obliterate me?" For the woman in the red dress, nothing was more powerful than this threat. No one knew that she wasn't like this in the beginning. As a small online streamer who accidentally traveled to a strange and different world and had a powerful live streaming system in her head, she seemed like the standard for a female lead in a romance drama. The system's behavior was also similar to that of a novel. She became more and more convinced that she was extraordinary. At first, the system used its own tasks to test her bottom line and make her do things she didn't want to do. She was also unhappy. It was just a system, but it wanted to control her. Who was the host? And who was the obedient servant? She completed 2 tasks and tasted the sweetness. She resisted the 3rd task, and the system judged her failure. The price of failure was a 2nd-level electric shock punishment. She didn't dare to recall that painful feeling after experiencing it once. On one hand, there was the generous reward for completing the task, and on the other hand, there was the painful punishment for failing the task. She cleverly chose the former. Even if the tasks issued by the system made her frown and made her feel uneasy, she still worked hard to complete the tasks when she thought of her own interests. As long as she was well, what did the life and death of other people have to do with her? When her streamer level reached the top, she would be able to travel back to this world with her gains from all these years. This world would have nothing to do with her. It was a little like, after I die, who cares about the flood? As long as her interests were not harmed, the life and death of others had nothing to do with her. The system said darkly, "Host, do you need me to remind you how many popularity points you owe me now?" Chapter 763. Although the debtor was the boss, this did not apply to the system. Not only did the system control the debt, but it also controlled the life of the woman in red. "Host, let me remind you again. You were the one who first proposed to expose Lu Shi's identity. You also thought that the crime of deceiving the emperor could bring down the father and daughter. You're just telling me your thoughts, and then you want me to be a follower and push the blame onto me." The system was not without a temper. It had failed again and again. This had already worn out the system's patience with the woman in red. However, Jiang Pengji had bound the system to the body of the woman in red. As long as Jiang Pengji did not release the woman, the system would not be free at all, let alone find a new host. Before Jiang Pengji kicked the bucket, the system could only pinch its nose and bind itself to the foolish host, cleaning up after her mess. The woman in red's face was flushed. It was not from embarrassment, but from anger. She did not know much about politics. How would she know that deceiving the emperor was not a serious crime? She could only blame the television dramas she had watched in the past. They made her think that deceiving the emperor was a crime that could easily lead to the death of a person's entire family. Speaking of which, it was rather funny. In the past, the reason why the woman in red had been able to thrive was because of the system's golden finger, not her own brain. She had been wholeheartedly focused on how to fight for favor in the palace and how to please the audience in the live broadcast room. When had she ever studied the situation or politics? With the system, her face could be flawless. Her skin was fair and tender. Her figure was as graceful as the devil, and her curves were curvaceous. As for talent, with a skill book, she could be promoted from an ordinary internet celebrity to a global goddess in minutes. With the help of the system, she could not only use her appearance to capture men's attention, but her body was also very mysterious. What were the masterpieces and the white tiger? They were just child's play. There were more mysterious treasures that could make men crave the taste. It was like poison seeping into their bones. It was difficult to quit once they were addicted. If the senses of the body were used as an analogy, a man and a woman in red rolling in the sheets was like eating the world's best delicacy. It could conquer the taste buds in one go. A man and an ordinary woman rolling in the sheets was like eating rancid porridge and sour rotten vegetables. How could the taste be the same? The former was watertight, while the latter was like an inelastic cowhide bag. It was puffing and leaking air. When it came to seducing people, the red-clothed woman was very familiar with them. But when it came to the political situation, she was completely clueless. How could you expect a useless person raised by the system to put in the effort to learn boring politics? She took it for granted that deceiving the emperor was a serious crime. She did not know that the current emperor had no prestige to speak of. The imperial power was loose, and the royal family had lost all face. They could only struggle at death's door. How could they use a chicken feather as a command arrow to deal with a feudal vassal? The woman in red thought that she could succeed, but in the end, she walked right into Jiangpingji's trap. She was caught and killed by Jiangpingji. I don't want to go against her anymore, the red-clothed woman muttered in a low voice. She thought back to her 3 deaths, each one more miserable than the last. She couldn't help but shudder. The system said coldly, "Between you and her, only one can survive. Either you die or she dies. Are you sure you want to give up?" The woman in red was choked to the point that she couldn't speak. In the end, her desire to live overcame her fear. "You really are the stupidest host I've ever seen. You know you can't beat Lu Shi, so why do you keep coming at him? You can achieve your goal by hurting the people around her. You can't get close to Lu Shi personally and give him the level 9 loyalty talisman, but you can use tricks like confusion and control to make the people around her betray her. You have to be flexible." The woman in red suddenly had a flash of insight. To really attack Lu Shi, using Lu Shi as a target is not a bad idea. The system was not optimistic about her choice and poured a bucket of cold water on her. Lu Shi stays in Chongzhou all year round. It doesn't matter if the father and daughter don't meet each other at least once a year. Moreover, based on the hatred between you and Lu Shi, do you think he won't have his guard up? Or do you think that your body can seduce Lu Shi? To put it mildly, when Lu Shi faced the woman in the red dress, he would be lucky if he didn't vomit, let alone attack the city. Then who should I choose? The woman in red mumbled softly and began to analyze. Currently, among Lu Shi's subordinates, only a few can get close to her and gain her trust. Meng Hun, Li Yun, Dian Yan, Yang Si, Feng Zhen. Meng Hun and Dian Yan are too ugly. According to Gu Min's memory, Yang Si is a smart and self-disciplined person. Only Li Yun and Feng Zhen are left. Based on looks, she would definitely choose Li Yun. He was a handsome white horse with unparalleled waist strength, a real high-quality fresh meat. It was said that he was a virgin and would be easy to control. However, considering Li Yun's wariness as a martial artist and the fact that women were not allowed in the military camp, it would be difficult for her to sneak in. After a round of elimination, it seemed that only Feng Zhen was left. Feng Zhen is a beauty. To put it bluntly, he's a lecher. He's a good choice. Although she disliked the weak body of a scholar, he was the most suitable. At that moment, the system reminded her mercilessly, "Host, if you still want to revive, make the decision to revive as soon as possible. Otherwise, if you wait for those people outside to cremate your corpse and then want to reconstruct your body, I'm afraid it will be impossible without tens of billions of popularity points." The woman in red's face paled, and she immediately said, "Of course I want to revive. 2 billion popularity points, no bargaining." The woman in red's face was almost unsightly. 2 billion? Reviving will increase the price? The system explained, the amount of popularity points used for reviving is determined by the degree of damage to the corpse. The smaller the damage, the smaller the cost. Your corpse. Lu Shi was more ruthless, more thorough than dismemberment. The degree of damage is greater, so the cost is also higher. The woman in red waved her hand weakly. 2 billion it is. As the saying goes, when you have too much debt, you don't need to worry. She was already carrying a debt of 2 billion, so adding another 2 billion wouldn't hurt. Anyway, it would be paid in installments. Based on her popularity in the streaming room, she would be able to clear her debt after a few years of hard work. With the system's help, after a gust of demonic wind, The corpse that should have been cremated was swept away, alarming countless officials and making it impossible for them to sleep at night. Jiang Pengji, on the other hand, ate well and slept soundly. She slept dreamlessly until dawn. She was already the magistrate of Wanzhou, so she couldn't leave the base camp for too long. The mission of the Alliance army to rescue the king was almost complete. She should also pack up and prepare to return home. As for whether Prince Changsho, who had already proclaimed himself emperor, would make a comeback after the Alliance army left, it had nothing to do with her. "Why is my lord free to come out today?" Feng Zhen raised his sleeves to cover his yawn. 2 drops of tears squeezed out of the corners of his eyes. He had cultivated too late last night, so he didn't have enough sleep. Jiang Pengji said gloomily, "This time, your lord came to rescue the king for only 3 things. First, to be the official magistrate of Wanzhou. Second, to make some money by selling the method of making flashing bricks. Third, to see if the other side is tight and to poach some people. So far, the first 2 things have been done well. I came out with empty pockets, but when I go back, my pockets are full. But there's only one person, Qi Kuang. Sure, you're slacking." Feng Zhen was speechless. He had almost forgotten about this matter. However, he couldn't be said to be slacking. Even Qi Kuang, who was the only remaining person, had been roped in by him. Chapter 764. There are no corners in this world that can't be pried open, only people who don't work hard. Jiang Pengji readily accepted Feng Zhen's advice and made him swallow his words. Think about the whole of Wanzhou. There's so little land and so few people. You have to do everything yourself. Sooner or later, you'll die of exhaustion at the desk. Jiang Pengji was just short of telling Feng Zhen, "If you still want breaks, young ladies, wine, and delicacies, hurry up and get to work." Even if she didn't say it clearly, with Feng Zhen's IQ, how could he not understand the deeper meaning behind her words? It was precisely because he understood that he regretted it even more. Of all the things she should not have done, she should not have rushed over after receiving Wei Si's letter. Now he had plunged into a bottomless pit of overtime, endured Jiang Pengji's exploitation, and had no proper breaks all year round. For prodigal son, no private time meant no chance to live a dissolute life, no chance to interact with various young ladies. He had nothing to live for. It's just that this also depends on fate. It can't be forced. Feng Zhen weakly tried to defend himself. It was useless to poach ordinary people. Top talents weren't radishes that grew legs and could be bought at wholesale prices. It depended on fate. Besides, for the sake of the internal harmony of the entire Wanzhou group, Feng Zhen couldn't bring all the good and bad people to his own family. Could he? If Feng Zhen dared to do so, would Jiang Pengji dare to accept those uneven talents? Sometimes I'm quite envious of those with good backgrounds and big businesses. At least they don't have to worry about talent. Jiang Pengji looked at the desolate and deserted streets and complained in a low voice. "The Su brothers are fine, but I can't even compare to Bogeo." Jiang Pengji wouldn't admit defeat in other aspects, but in terms of personal charm, she was a nameless wildflower by the roadside. No matter how hard she tried to bloom, she still couldn't compare to flowers like peonies and medicinal peonies that attracted butterflies and bees. That was a real pain in the ass. Feng Zhen was 2 steps behind Jiang Pengji. When he heard her complaints, he couldn't help but laugh. It's clearly the Lord who's stubborn and concealing her shortcomings. How is it that you're inferior to others? Feng Zhen wasn't comforting Jiang Pengji. He was speaking the truth. Jiang Pengji's current situation was not her own doing. Even though the Lus in Hejian County were not considered the top aristocratic families, they were still in the middle of the second tier. With a father like Lu Shi, who laid a solid foundation for the next generation, Jiang Pengji's resources and advantages were far more abundant than she had imagined. As long as Jiang Pengji was willing to reveal Lu Shi's name, borrow the power of the Lus, and use the resources at hand, would there be a shortage of talents? He might not be able to surpass the Su brothers, but he was more than capable of defeating Huang Song. In this era, Wasn't it all about relying on one's father and one's ancestors? His lord held a few powerful trump cards in her hands, but she refused to show them. What else could she do? If she didn't show these trump cards and show her foundation, she naturally wouldn't be able to attract enough attention. As a result, the scholars in the world didn't know much about her. The scholars couldn't see the slightest bit of hope in her to display their skills and ambitions. Which fool would take the initiative to join her? To put it simply, she clearly had the qualifications to rely on her father and ancestors, but she insisted on starting from scratch. Wasn't this looking for abuse? Not only did his lord want to abuse herself, but she also wanted to drag her subordinates along with her. This was very torturous. However, Feng Zhen seemed unreliable, but in fact he had a clear mind. He could see through everything. His lord refused to borrow the power of her father and the clan. It was obvious that she wanted to stir up trouble. She was born into an aristocratic family, but she wanted to attack the aristocratic families. Did you think this child was a bear? Jiang Pengji waved her hand weakly and frowned. I know what you want to say. Since this is the path I chose, I will finish climbing it even if I have to kneel down. It's very difficult for me to do it alone. Don't I still have you guys? In short, I'm short of people now. Go and poach them for me. After talking for a long time, the topic still went back to the original topic. Feng Zhen expressed that he was weak and didn't have the strength to wield a hoe. Jiang Pengji was so angry that she laughed. She stood still and asked him, "Then what do you want?" Feng Zhen muttered to himself for a while and said, "Speaking of which, there are many places in the imperial city where one can seek pleasure and relax the body and mind. It's rare for me to come here. If I don't see the scenery of the human world, wouldn't I have come for nothing? I really don't have any other intentions. I just want to go and experience it." Jiang Pengji chuckled. An old mast that has seen thousands of sails wants to go and experience it. This is definitely the coldest joke I've ever heard. If she didn't let him go, Feng Zhen was obviously saying, "I already have a choice, but if you don't let me go and have some fun, I'll slack off." Jiang Pengji's molars were itching to see this. If she let him go, who knew if Feng Zhen would enjoy himself so much that he forgot to go back home? The two of them confronted each other on the street, attracting the attention of many people. They had no choice but to stare at them. Who asked them to attract too much attention? Jiang Pengji was dressed in female clothing, but she was taller than all the men on the street. Her aura was too. The voice of a hearty man came from the room. His voice was full of vigor and vitality, far more energetic than a patient with kidney deficiency like Feng Zhen. "I brought someone with me, so I was delayed on the way here. I hope Chongming can forgive me." Before they even entered, Feng Zhen was already smiling and bowing in apology. Jiang Pengji deliberately lagged a few steps behind. She waited for Feng Zhen to go in and talk to someone before she stepped into the private room. A person's appearance could be deliberately concealed, and his aura could be restrained, but his temperament could not be concealed. The man in dark brown clothes saw Jiang Pengji and was stunned for a while. He bowed with his hands folded in front and said, "This commoner pays his respects to the commander of the army." Beside Feng Zhen was a young woman with a strong aura. Other than Lu Shi, who was currently in the limelight, there was no one else. Jiang Pengji also sized him up. This man, whom Feng Zhen called Chongming, was about 30 years old and had a beautifully trimmed goatee. His face still looked very youthful, but his eyes carried a calmness that a young man didn't have. No matter how one looked at him, this person was much more reserved and restrained than Feng Zhen. Jiang Pengji said casually, "No need to be so polite. I just hope that you won't blame me for being an uninvited guest." No. The fact that Magistrate Liu is here is a great surprise to this commoner. Jiang Pengji wasn't familiar with the man, so she didn't deliberately intervene in their conversation. She just deliberately restrained her aura and lowered her presence. On the other side, the man secretly winked at Feng Zhen, asking with his eyes what was going on. Wasn't it just supposed to be him and Feng Zhan? And the two of them communicated harmoniously in private? Why did Feng Zhan's current lord come over? Feng Zhan smiled bitterly and pointed at the shriveled money pouch hanging on his waist. The man instantly understood. Although he understood, he still felt a little uncomfortable. For example, a man and a woman chatting on a blind date with more than a dozen friends and relatives next to them. How could they feel at ease? Jiang Pengji also realized that it was inappropriate. She simply found an excuse to go out for a walk, giving them some privacy. Your lord's aura doesn't seem like that of an ordinary person. No wonder Zixiao has such a high opinion of her, the man said. Feng Zhan was surprised. Zixiao wrote a letter to you? He did. Zixiao praised her so much in the letter, as if he was praising his own son. I've known him for so many years, but I've never seen him praise someone so hard. But at that time, I was going to try my luck with the Su brothers, so I politely declined his invitation. The man's surname was Xiao, and his first name was Guang. His courtesy name was Chongming. Feng Zhan made an O sound. He wasn't surprised by Xiao Guang's choice. Xiao Guang's hometown was in Jia County, which was the headquarters of the Su family. He would definitely favor the local power. Noble Su family. These 4 words were a golden signboard. It didn't need to deliberately bloom to attract countless bees and butterflies. It seems like your life in the Su family isn't going your way. He smiled helplessly. If it was going my way, I wouldn't be here. The Su brothers aren't bad, but they value family status too much, so I'm not very suitable for Guang. As the saying goes, those who walk different paths can't make plans together. Coincidentally, you sent me news, so I came to give it a try. Xiao Guang wanted to become an official under the Su brothers, but they had high standards and were picky about family status. Xiao Guang was lucky enough to be chosen, but because of his lowly background, he had never been put in an important position. It was like an exquisite toy bought on the street, beautiful but useless. It was pure coincidence that he had secretly hooked up with Feng Zhan. A good man's ambition was to travel far and wide. Xiao Guang was open-minded. If one family didn't work out, he would jump to another. He wouldn't hang himself under an old locust tree. To put it in a narcissistic way, the Su brothers were blind and missed out on a bright pearl. That was their loss. With Wei Si's flattery, Xiao Guang had a certain impression of Jiang Pengji. When he heard news, he would more or less pay attention to Lu Shi. His initial impression of her was pretty good. Now that Feng Zhan was recommending him, Xiao Guang was hesitant about whether or not he should accept the recommendation. As for Jiang Pengji's identity as a woman, it didn't affect him much. As a commoner of lowly birth, no matter how capable he was, he didn't have much capital to choose his lord. Moreover, with the recommendation of 2 friends, if he joined the Wanzhou group, he wouldn't have to fight alone. As long as he could stand out and fulfill his ambitions, he didn't care if his lord was a man or a woman, a dog or a human. It was a bold idea, but it could be seen that Xiao Guang was a hard-working and practical person. In other words, it was, don't touch that job, let me do it. Look at my lord. Is she satisfied? Feng Zhan winked. Xiao Guang had a strange expression on his face. A woman who can go to a brothel with you. It's really hard to explain. Although Wei Si and Feng Zhan's recommendation was very tempting, he felt that a woman who could hang out with Feng Zhan wouldn't have such a frivolous personality, right? Thinking about the losses he had suffered at the hands of Feng Zhan and Wei Si, he always felt the urge to break into a run. Feng Zhan said, "How can my lord be an ordinary woman? What's wrong with visiting a brothel? If she doesn't come, will you pay the bill later?" Thinking back, when Jiang Pengji had abducted him, she had promised to play at public expense. Chapter 766. What do you think? Give me a definite answer so that I can pass it on to my lord, so that she won't stay out for too long and cause trouble. If Feng Zhan and Xiao Guang were a couple on a blind date, then Jiang Pengji was a group of friends and relatives. In order not to disturb their conversation, she went out to avoid arousing suspicion. Feng Zhan understood why she was doing this, so he didn't spend too much effort teasing Xiao Guang. He got straight to the point. If it was delayed for too long, who knew if his lord would cause some trouble in the brothel. This was a place where conflicts were high. If rumors spread that Lu Prefecture magistrate fought with someone over a beauty in a brothel, or the minister of the palace took his love away for the sake of a beauty, it wouldn't be pleasant to hear. If it happened to a man, it would be romantic, but if it happened to a woman, it would be a loss. After being warned by Yang Si, Feng more or less took it in. Occasionally, he would secretly worry about Jiang Pengji's identity as a woman, so that she wouldn't be taken advantage of. Xiao Guang was speechless. He struggled internally. This isn't a small matter. I should give Guang some time to think about it. Based on the current situation, Wanzhou was indeed an excellent place to go. Lu Shi's background wasn't bad. Even though he was still a long way off from the Su brothers, he was still the son of an aristocratic family with a noble background. Lu Shi's power wasn't weak. It was best if Lu Shi gave him power. If Lu Shi wasn't willing to give him power, she could sit on a state and not be empty-handed. If Xiao Guang wanted to abandon the Su family and jump ship, Jiang Pengji was indeed a good choice. The key was, if he liked her, would she like him? It wasn't that Xiao Guang felt inferior, but one had to look at one's family background to become an official. If his family background was good, he wouldn't be neglected by the Su family. With a solemn attitude, Xiao Guang asked about the situation in Wanzhou and Jiang Pengji's team structure. Don't think that his questions were nonsense. By asking these questions, he could judge and understand Jiang Pengji's character. Only then could he make a decision. Things couldn't happen again and again. Xiao Guang had abandoned the Su family and jumped ship to Lu Shi. If he still couldn't get an important position under Lu Shi and was buried because of his family background, then what was the point of him jumping ship? Was he supposed to keep kicking Lu Shi and find another family? There were still some questions that needed to be clarified. Feng Zhen could understand Xiao Guang's worries, but he didn't expose the other's attempt to test him. Instead, he went along with the other's topic of conversation and replied to them one by one. The more Xiao Guang heard, the more astonished he became, and he almost spilled the tea in his hand. Are you telling the truth? According to Feng Zhen's description, apart from Feng Jin, who was born into a good family, everyone else in the Wanzhou group was below the passing mark. From this, it could be seen that Lu Shi really did not care about one's background. He did not have to worry about this. As long as they didn't discriminate against his background, Xiao Guang felt that he would still be able to make a name for himself one day. Feng Jin scoffed and said, "How could it be fake?" His lord had taken over all of Wanzhou without saying a word. She seemed to have a lot of power, but who knew who Lu Shi was before sending troops to rescue the emperor? The most she could say was Lu Shi's son, or like father, like son. How many geniuses could she attract with her meager wealth? Even if they were willing to come, she might not dare to accept them. After all, we're recruiting talents, not looking for ancestors for ourselves. After saying this, Feng Zhen paused and lowered his voice to speak to Xiao Guang. To put it bluntly, after sending troops to rescue the emperor, the lord's reputation should have soared. Even if she can't compete with the Su brothers, in Dongqing, there are less than 5 people whose reputation can surpass hers. It should have been a great situation, but news of the lord's identity was revealed. Let me ask you, the world despises women so much. Which geniuses from noble families would be willing to submit to a woman? Even if Dongqing was not like Zhongzhou, where the 4 self-accomplishment classic for women was rampant, it was still affected to a certain extent. Not to mention the current era, which was becoming stricter and stricter. Even if it was traced back to the early days of the Xia dynasty, weren't there also people who made up all sorts of scandals about the ancestor of the Su family? Master Su? Don't underestimate these seemingly harmless scandals. They were in themselves disdainful and belittling of Master Su. Those who attacked Master Su never used the reason of Master Su's lack of ability. It was simply because she was a woman. Even now, it was still the same. In many people's eyes, gender was the original sin, which had nothing to do with ability. Xiao Guang looked hesitant and asked in a low voice, "Zisure, if you tell Guang all this, you—" Feng Zhen snorted and laughed. The icing on the cake will never be as good as providing timely help. Using the Lord's crude words, "Today, you can ignore me, but tomorrow, you won't be able to reach me. The world scolds her for being a sissy, but who knows if she will ascend to the throne in the future. Now that you have nowhere to go, why not take a gamble? With the Lord's temperament, she will definitely not disappoint you. Xiao Guang felt as if his worldview had been completely changed. Could it be that you, like those ordinary people, believe that she can't do great things? Feng Zhen asked again. Xiao Guang secretly rolled his eyes and said helplessly, "We've been friends for many years. How can you not understand, Guang? Male or female, human or dog. To Guang, what difference does it make? How would others know what it feels like to be restricted in every way because of one's background?" Feng Zhen and Wei Xi's recommendation was too tempting. How could Xiao Guang not be tempted? To put it bluntly, the choice was in other people's hands, not his. Xiao Guang's temperament was like that, which was also why Wei Xi and Feng Zhen came to him one after another. After settling Xiao Guang, Jiang Pengji naturally didn't have to continue loitering outside. Did the Lord have a romantic encounter? Why are you smiling so happily? Feng Zhen looked at the smiling Jiang Pengji and asked with a dirty mouth. I didn't have a romantic encounter, but I met a beautiful woman with a beautiful face. I heard that she will be combing her hair today. Jiang Pengji's face was full of excitement. It wasn't just her. The bullet screen in the streaming room was full of content praising the beauty, one after another overwhelming. The corner of Feng Zhen's mouth twitched slightly, while Xiao Guang was dumbfounded. Was the new boss in front of him a man or a woman? What was combing? The original meaning was to use a wooden comb to comb the hair together and then tie a knot on the top of the head to signify the end of a girl's life. The meaning was obvious. It was hinting at the favor of a prostitute receiving a customer for the first time. If it was a man, it would be fine, but the new boss was a real woman. Jiang Pengji restrained the expression on her face and turned her gaze to Xiao Guang. Feng Zhen immediately understood and said a few words of introduction. Although the three of them had reached a consensus that Xiao Guang was going to jump ship and Jiang Pengji was going to poach Su Bei, they still had to put on a show. So, Chongming is really willing to give up his current future and lend me a helping hand. Xiao Guang bowed and said, I hope that the Lord will not give up. In this life, I will do my best to assist the Lord. Chapter 767. It was worth mentioning that Xiao Guang's forte was not in strategizing. His intelligence was higher than the average person's, but if he wanted to compete with a black-hearted person like Feng Zhen, he was still too inexperienced. Feng Zhen had poached him and recommended him to Jiang Pengji because Xiao Guang was a relatively unpopular talent. He specialized in water conservancy and minor demoism. It was no wonder that Xiao Guang had never been put in an important position by the Su brothers. The Su family was rooted in Zhe County, which was a fertile land with abundant rainfall, but not flooding. Ordinary people could handle simple tasks, but Xiao Guang had no chance to display his skills for the slightly more difficult tasks. He was of little value. On the other hand, Jiang Pengji definitely needed Xiao Guang. Last year, Wanzhou had experienced a great drought. If Jiang Pengji hadn't discovered it early and taken preventive measures, who knew how many innocent people would have died of thirst and how much fertile land would have been wasted? There would have been no harvest, and the whole year would have been difficult. Feng Zhen's swing of the hoe this time was too accurate. With a swing of the hoe, he had poached the talent she needed the most. The atmosphere was harmonious. Jiang Pengji didn't put on any airs. She didn't make people think she was easy to bully, but she also didn't make people think she was unreachable. After a round of conversation, Xiao Guang was secretly surprised. In his eyes, the Su brothers were already rare geniuses among the younger generation. However, they still had a small flaw that was unavoidable for the descendants of landowning households. They were proud of their noble bloodline and looked down on those with poor backgrounds. It was extremely rare for them to lower their statuses and open their hearts to others. If only the Su brothers were like this. In the eyes of others, they would probably receive the evaluation of little princesses with so many flaws. Unfortunately, the general atmosphere was like this. It was normal for them to look down on others. Those poor bastards who wanted to stand out had wishful thinking. To put it in a vulgar way, they weren't called princess soldiers. They were little princesses. In Xiao Guang's opinion, Jiang Pingji was also a noble son of noble birth, a noble daughter. Regardless of whether she was a noble son or a noble daughter, even if she was a meritorious person, she should still have the arrogance and nobility of a gentry family in her bones. After some interaction, he realized that Jiang Pengji wasn't difficult to get along with. He even had the urge to get close to her. She was amiable, but wouldn't make people look down on or offend her. She was noble, but wouldn't make people feel unapproachable. In short, this was a rather non-mainstream aristocratic family. Xiao Guang still had eyes. Whether it was an act or sincere, he had a balance in his heart and could clearly distinguish it. In this way, he didn't feel the slightest bit of psychological pressure when he called Jiang Pengji his lord. Jiang Pengji ordered many delicacies, and the three of them ate until they were almost full. She looked at the empty space beside them and asked, "Should I call 2 people over to serve me? Don't forget where they are. It would be too formal if they didn't call the dancers over." The 2 men fell silent at the same time. Once again, they confirmed that their lord was a woman. Visiting a brothel? Why was he even more open-minded than the 2 of them? "You don't want to? It's rare for me to treat you. If you're wrong, there won't be a next time." Fengzhen didn't hold back anymore. With a wave of his hand, he summoned quite a few beauties. He even asked Jiang Pengji about them. "It's a pity that this isn't the south courtyard. Otherwise, my lord would have ordered 2 as well." The so-called south courtyard was a male version of a brothel, a place where men were sold. The young masters inside were the prostitutes. Jiang Pengji raised her eyelids. "No need. You guys can have fun." Fengzhen was a shameless person. He didn't know what it meant to be reserved. Xiao Guang had just joined, so he was more reserved. More importantly, there was a female lord staring at him. If he hugged a flower lady, he would feel uncomfortable. Fengzhen ordered a few songs and dances in a row. He was fascinated. Jiang Pengji's fingers nimbly played with a wine cup in her hand. She glanced at the sky outside, and the corners of her lips curled up. "There are a few beauties grooming today. Are you interested in watching?" Fengzhen watched the beauties dance without blinking. Without turning his head, he said yes. Xiao Guang was speechless. He felt like he was dreaming. Even the male lords didn't have the face to say such things. Why was his new lord so bold and unrestrained? "And Fengzhen, why were you so shameless? Then go take a look. Maybe we'll have a romantic night together." As she said this, a strange look flashed in Jiang Pengji's eyes. Fengzhen and Xiao Guang didn't notice. Once again, Xiao Guang felt that his new lord was a little speechless. The brothel wasn't small. This time, there were 9 beauties, all between 14 and 16 years old. Looking at the young girl on the stage, the viewers in the live stream felt a little heavy. In the past, when Jiang Pengji visited brothels, she had encountered beauties grooming. The viewers could only watch, unable to save them. Fengzhen said in a low voice, "This brothel is interesting. After such a big commotion, they can still do something like this." Prince Changshuo's army attacked the imperial city of Qinzhou. They burned, killed, and looted. The entire imperial city was engulfed in the flames of war. Although the alliance army had stabilized the situation, they couldn't change the fact that the people were living in poverty. This brothel had survived the disaster and even produced so many beauties at once. It was really impressive. Jiang Pengji curled her lips and said, "I see a girl up there looking at you." Fengzhen noticed it too. The young courtesan girl who had been looking at him shyly was dressed in pink. She was about 15 or 16 years old. Her face was still a little immature, but she already had a beauty that could cause the downfall of the city. She was young, but her figure was curvaceous. She was not that hot and mature, but rather a little immature, somewhere between mature and immature. She stood there alone, and the 8 people around her immediately fell to the ground. She was the center of attention. Now, the center of attention was secretly looking at Fengzhen. Fengzhen said proudly, "She's still as charming as before. Young lady, you have good taste." Jiang Pengji chuckled. Sure, I see that your house is empty. You don't have a considerate person to take care of you. Why don't you buy one? Jiang Pengji's eyes were filled with malice and mockery. She suggested to Fengzhen, they're all young girls. If they stay in such a filthy place, I don't know what will happen to them. If you buy one, even if you don't give her a title, she can be your personal maid to take care of you. Based on what she said, she could be considered the best lord in the 5 countries. How can my lord make fun of others? Fengzhen shivered and begged for mercy. The naughty children at home are already enlightened. I really shouldn't harm young girls. I appreciate my lord's kind intentions, but I can't accept them. How could Fengzhen not know Jiang Pengji's temperament? Similarly, how could Jiang Pengji not know Fengzhen's temperament? Fengzhen liked young ladies, but they should be mature and charming young ladies. He'd never touched these kinds of unripe fruits. It wasn't the first time that the two of them had colluded to drink in a brothel. How could his lord not know what he liked? He only liked mature ladies. He didn't like young girls. Chapter 768. If one didn't understand Fengzhen, they might think that he was a gentleman, but in reality, even the audience in the streaming room saw through his tricks. Uncle loves lowly. This is definitely the funniest joke I've heard today. Fengzhen doesn't want the fat meat that's right in front of him. Young beauty royal sister. That lady is so pretty. She'll mature in another 2 years. She'll be as pretty as Sister Huijun. Fengzhen actually said he didn't like her. Streamer, did the sun rise from the west on your side? Has Fengzhen changed his mind? Zwizhen Beishijing. I'd rather believe that the sun rises from the west than believe that Fengzhen will change his preferences. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu. A prodigal son is a prodigal son. I don't believe that he'll repent. He must be playing hard to get. Faced with the questioning and ridicule on the screen, Jiang Pengji smiled and teased Fengzhen. Didn't you complain that you don't have anyone close to you? Jiang Pengji bluntly exposed Fengzhen's disguise and said bluntly, now that I've agreed to find you one, why are you acting so reserved? Do you want to be a saint who doesn't lust after women? I'm telling you, this won't happen again. I'm in a good mood today. If you want a girl up there, I'll buy her. If you don't want it, don't make a fuss in the future. Fengzhen frowned. He knew Jiang Pengji. The lord in front of him had a black heart. When had she ever been so generous? She was so stingy that she wouldn't even give him a break. How could she reward him with a beauty? Fengzhen frowned. He realized that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Do you want it? Jiang Pengji smiled and leaned against the table. She supported her chin with one hand and held a wine cup in the other. Her eyes carried a hint of mockery. Fengzhen gathered his thoughts and secretly gritted his teeth. He smiled and agreed. It's rare for my lord to spend money. Of course I can't miss it. But with such an outstanding beauty, I'm afraid the price of combing her hair won't be low. He wanted to see what his lord was up to this time. Jiang Pengji teased him lazily. Zisher has done me a great service and recommended me well. It's just a beauty. How can it be considered spending money? Not to mention one. Even if you want all 9 on the round table, as long as you think you can handle it, I don't mind buying all of them for you. Fengzhen, he didn't even like one lowly, let alone 9. Don't be fooled by his unrestrained private life. It wasn't that he didn't have principles. He shook his head seriously and said, my lord, please don't joke with me. With my body, I still need to take care of it. I can't withstand any torment. In order to avoid Jiang Pengji's dirty tricks, he started to defame himself and said that he couldn't do it anymore. Jiang Pengji knew when to stop. She pointed at the beautiful girl in the middle and said, no matter how I look, this girl is the most beautiful. Which man doesn't like good-looking women? Zisher is also my right-hand man, so he should be matched with the most beautiful woman. How about choosing her? Fengzhen agreed with a smile on his face, but on the inside, he was frowning fiercely. He felt a little uneasy. How could he not know what kind of person his lord was? The more this person was like this, the more uneasy he felt. The unknown always made people nervous. Fengzhen couldn't guess Jiang Pengji's intentions, so he could only focus on dealing with it. He was not a fool. How could he believe Jiang Pengji's words? If she was really considerate of her subordinates and wanted to show her kindness, she could just let everyone have a break. Why would she need to send beauties? He was afraid that she was a demon in the skin of a beauty. Of the 9 artists, only the one in the middle has the most beautiful appearance. Xiao Guang didn't know what was going on and agreed. He secretly sighed at the good relationship between Jiang Pengji and Feng Zhen. He felt more and more satisfied. My lord has good taste. You picked the best one at a glance. Jiang Pengji smiled and asked Xiao Guang, does Cheng Wang want to choose one as well? Seeing that the fire was about to burn him, Xiao Guang smiled bitterly and declined. I have wives and concubines at home. They've been together for many years. I can't bear to add another person. Xiao Guang thought to himself, not only can I not add another person now, I can't casually add another person in the future. My lord is a woman. Why would she like to see her subjects have multiple wives and concubines? Feng Zhen's situation was special. He didn't have a wife or concubine in his backyard. It was normal for my lord to bestow another person. As they spoke, the artists on the stage appeared one by one. Other than the one with the best looks, the other 8 weren't bad looking either. There were all kinds of them, each with their own characteristics, and they attracted a lot of hot gazes. Lively and cute, sweet and charming, pure and quiet, steady and generous, elegant and elegant. Their looks were limited by their age and hadn't fully developed, but one could already see the charm they would have in a few years. To put it simply, the beauties in the palace were nothing more than this. The young artists with braided hair were all wearing black wedding dresses. The guest who offered the highest price would be her groom for the night. The rich and the nobles were competing with each other. The pimp who was the MC on the stage was so happy that she could only see her teeth. The artists were ranked according to their social status and appearance. The most ordinary ones were ranked first, and the best ones were ranked last. Without a doubt, the beautiful girl who attracted everyone's attention was the most precious jewel of the night. A storm of blood was about to start. Looking at the final prices of the artists in front, Feng Zhen's brows furrowed even tighter. Something was wrong. According to this price, the last lady will cost at least 200,000 strings of coins. My lord, Jiang Pengji was generous to her subordinates and gave them generous benefits, but she didn't like to waste them. She was generous to her subordinates because they deserved the salary. It was an equivalent exchange. But this girl in front of him, other than her good looks, what else could attract Jiang Pengji to spend so much money to bid for her? If his lord was a man, he could understand. Spending a lot of money for a beauty was a romantic thing to do. But the lord was a woman. It was ridiculous to spend so much money just to buy a courtesan to serve her counselor. Wait, there's no hurry. Jiang Pengji smiled and drank a cup of wine, indicating for Feng Zhen to not be anxious. I'll definitely let you be the groom tonight. The beauty won't fall into the arms of others. Your lord is quite reliable at times like this. Don't panic. Feng Zhen was speechless. He would rather his lord not be so reliable. After a few rounds of intense bidding, the atmosphere of the grooming ceremony reached its peak. The pimp was wearing heavy makeup that day. She looked as if she was marrying off her daughter. Well, for the pimp of a brothel, holding a grooming ceremony for her subordinates was in itself another way of marrying off her daughter. The strange thing was, the 8th artist had already finished her bidding, but the 9th artist still hadn't moved. The guests below the stage had some strange reactions. Chapter 769. A girl from a brothel naturally couldn't be the wife of a high official or a rich man. The brothel keeper had to settle for the next best thing, a concubine, and she'd even promised 1,000 gold coins. As soon as she said this, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone looked at Miss Wan passionately. Someone asked, I wonder who Miss Wan has taken a liking to. As soon as the question was asked, Wan shyly glanced in Feng Zhen's direction. Feng Zhen shuddered involuntarily, feeling weak all over. He didn't like young girls like her. When he used to wander around the red light district, he'd always found mature, beautiful women who understood the ways of the world. At least they wouldn't easily go easy on their benefactors. If it was a young girl like her, things would be different. Feng Zhen didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Being young and immature meant that she had little experience and would easily go easy on people. Jiang Pengji teased him from the side. She's looking at you. She's obviously interested in you. Feng Zhen gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, My lord, please don't tease me. She doesn't want a single cent of your money. Instead, she's bringing 1,000 gold coins to be your concubine. You're not moved at all? Xiao Guang was surprised, but what surprised him even more was that his lord had already predicted this scene. Feng Zhen said righteously, I'm not moved. While he was resisting the peach blossom that had been delivered to his doorstep, the other guests were also in an uproar. They didn't understand why a beautiful girl would take a liking to a poor middle-aged man who had a woman by his side. To put it bluntly, the man's eye bags were swollen and he had dark circles around his eyes. He was obviously weak. How could he satisfy a young and beautiful girl? The girl was young and immature. How could they let such a beautiful girl marry such an unreliable, ordinary man? Seeing that a beautiful flower was about to be stuck in a pile of cow dung, someone stood up to object. Miss Huan, you're so beautiful. Why would you take a liking to such a poor, ordinary man? That's right. He even has a female companion by his side. He's obviously not the one to entrust his life to. On the stage, Lady Huan raised her fan and covered her face slightly. She walked in front of Feng Zhen with dignified steps, completely shattering Feng Zhen's dream that Lady Huan had taken a liking to Xiao Guang. She bowed slightly and looked at Feng Zhen with a burning gaze. I am of lowly birth and know that I am not worthy of you. However, I'm still delusional and hope that you will take pity on me and grant me my wish. Even if I don't have a title, I will gladly endure it. Feng Zhen smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, My wife's great hospitality is something that I cannot accept. To tell you the truth, I am nearly 30 this year, and I have a child at home who is just starting out. It would not be good for me to delay you. Now that you are still in your prime, you will naturally find someone who will treat you sincerely. Huan bit her red lips, which were illuminated by the candlelight, and her eyes were watery. I truly love you, Lang Jun. No matter how many wives, concubines, and children you have in your family, even if I can only be a lowly concubine or not, as long as I can be by your side, I have no regrets. Feng Zhen, there was something wrong with the script. Jiang Pengji smiled and covered her mouth. Since she likes you so much and has fallen in love with you at first sight, just accept her. Feng Zhen secretly cursed in his heart. His lord was obviously waiting for a good show. Xiao Guang also egged on from the side, laughing at Feng Zhen's embarrassment at being teased. Feng Zhen secretly took a deep breath. Even though others envied him for being able to win the heart of a beauty, who knew how frustrated he felt inside, not to mention anything else. Just his lord's behavior alone made him feel very perturbed. More importantly, Huaner had obviously come prepared, and her target was him alone. Normally, no matter how much love at first sight, seeing that there was a beautiful woman by the man's side, one would have some reservations and wouldn't be so thick-skinned as to stick close to him. But Huaner hadn't looked at Jiang Pengji at all, as if she already knew of her existence. Feng Zhen didn't mind making a bold guess. Huaner already knew of his lord's identity, and she also knew of his identity. A beauty throwing herself at him might not necessarily be a blessing in love. Feng Zhen was displeased, but he secretly saw the look in Jiang Pengji's eyes. He endured it and finally gave in to reality. If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble you, Huaner. It was obvious that this was a tacit agreement. Huaner looked bashful. With the help of the brothel keeper, she went upstairs to the bridal chamber to wait for Feng Zhen. No matter how displeased the other guests were, they couldn't simply show their anger. The atmosphere was relatively peaceful. Jiang Pengji and the other two returned to the private room. As expected, the brothel keeper sent someone to deliver the dowry. She opened the box and took out the high-quality gold ingot. She had a chilling smile on her face. Go. Tonight's groom, your bride, is waiting for you. Don't keep her waiting. Feng Zhen's expression darkened. He asked in a low voice, What does my lord mean? She knew what Huan was planning from the start, yet she still pushed him into the fire pit. It was obvious that she wasn't making him the groom, but rather a lab rat. Jiang Pengji said, Don't worry. Just treat it as a blessing and love. Just accept it. Even though Feng Zhen was a playboy, he wasn't completely unscrupulous. Even if Juan had ulterior motives, he couldn't not know the truth and sleep with her for no reason. Yet his lord kept him guessing and didn't want to tell him the truth. Since you're so curious, go find out the truth yourself. Feng Zhen took a deep breath and looked at the gold ingots worriedly. I'm afraid I'll lose myself before I can get anything out of her. Jiang Pengji teased him playfully. Don't worry. Tonight is your wedding night. I'll guard the door for you. If she wants to harm you, just scream and I'll rush in to protect your chastity. Feng Zhen's mouth twitched. He resisted the urge to kill his lord. Could it be a honey trap? Xiao Guang chewed on peanuts. Is she using this to sow discord between my lord and Zhi? To seek other benefits? Feng Zhen said, it doesn't seem like it. If it's a honey trap, the price is too high. Who would be willing to waste a 26-year-old beauty on him? You'll know once you go take a look. Jiang Pengji continued to urge him. I'll disguise myself as a manservant and follow you in. Feng Zhen said helplessly, fine, that's all we can do for now. She had an unreliable lord, and her subordinates were even willing to sell their male charms. According to the rules of the brothel, Feng Zhen changed his clothes. He looked like a bridegroom. In the wedding room, the beauty had already dressed up. The air was filled with a sweet scent. Putting down the circular fan, Huan saw Jiang Pengji behind Feng Zhen. Her expression froze. She asked timidly, Lang Jun, this person. Feng Zhen said heroically, she's just a manservant. You don't have to care about her. Otherwise, you'll miss the night. Jiang Pengji made her face look very ordinary. The audience in the streaming room sighed. Jiang Pengji wasn't putting on makeup. She was obviously changing her face. Huan didn't continue talking about the manservant. She and Feng Zhen went through the procedure one by one. Just as they were about to drink the nuptial wine, a peanut hit the soft part of his waist. Feng Zhen was so shocked that his whole body trembled. He frowned and touched the edge of the peanut with his lips. He didn't touch the wine and put it down. Chapter 770. Why didn't he drink? Feng Zhen smiled bitterly. It wasn't that he didn't want to drink. It was his lord who warned him not to touch it. However, he couldn't say that out loud. He thought for a moment and found a reason. It's not that I don't drink, it's just that I don't drink enough. Feng Zhen put down the gourd and said seriously, I've been weak and sickly since birth. I've been taking good care of myself for many years and have only gotten better in recent years. I shouldn't drink too much alcohol or meat to avoid triggering the root of my illness and scaring Huan. He explained it so clearly that Huan-er's complexion improved. However, only she knew what she was thinking. Did he really drink the nuptial wine? Huan-er's expression didn't change. Her face was full of adoration for Feng Zhen, but her voice was unusually cold. After a while, a dry mechanical voice sounded in Huan-er's mind. No, the puppet venomous insect didn't respond. The puppet venomous insect, as the name suggested, could hide in a person's brain and control their words and actions without them realizing it. Huan wanted to use a normal loyalty talisman to control Feng Zhen, but his brain was much stronger than normal people's. Normal loyalty talismans wouldn't work on him at all. It wasn't just Feng Zhen. Almost all difficult tacticians couldn't be controlled by normal loyalty talismans. As for the unusual loyalty talisman, she didn't want to waste it on Feng Zhen, so she could only settle for something else. She searched the system store for a long time and finally found the puppet venomous insect. Not only did she want to use the puppet venomous insect to control Feng Zhen, but she also wanted to use him to get close to Jiang Pengji and find a chance to plant a level 9 loyalty talisman on her. Hearing the system's feedback, Huan didn't show it on the surface, but she was already gnashing her teeth in anger. Feng Zhen didn't drink. Lang Jun, the night of spring is short. Don't waste it. Huan put down the gourd and walked to Feng Zhen's side on her knees. Her delicate hands covered his right hand and gently placed it on her lapel. She lowered her eyes and leaned her delicate body in Feng Zhen's arms. She guided his hand to untie the belt around her waist. Her clothes were gently removed, revealing her fair shoulders. Lang Jun, am I beautiful? Her plump red lips moved slightly. Her gaze was full of tenderness, as if there were thousands of stars twinkling in them. If it was someone else, they would have been moved by her gaze. Feng Zhen still didn't react. Instead, he smiled and glanced at the beautiful woman in his arms. Very beautiful. The most beautiful I've ever seen in my life. He praised and tried to pull his hand back. At this time, there was some movement at his waist, and then there was the rustling sound of someone untying his belt. My wife Juana, it's still early since she's the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. Why aren't you moved at all? What else could Feng Zhen say? His private life was very unrestrained, but he knew very well what kind of woman he could mess with and what kind of woman he should avoid. Obviously, the beautiful girl in front of him belonged to the latter. Even though Feng Zhen still didn't know her background, the flaws she had revealed were enough to make him tense up. My heart is swaying. How can I not be moved? Feng Zhen's mouth was saying sweet nothings, but his heart was crying bitterly. What was going on? If the Lord did not make a move, would he really have to take a spear and go into battle and lose his innocence? Since you're moved, why don't you take me? The candlelight in the room flickered, and the air was filled with a sweet and flirtatious smell. Under Huan Er's passionate and bold invitation, Feng Zhen's hand was forced to rest inside her belly band. Well, she wasn't old, but her belly band was full of material. But when he thought of the Lord watching from outside, Feng Zhen couldn't summon any of his romantic thoughts. He felt bitter. He wanted to break free, but couldn't, so he could only be teased. Little did he know that someone was envious of his luck with women. This person was none other than the people in the streaming room who didn't mind watching the show. Ma Tawa, Josher, TSK, I feel like the entire streaming room is going to turn yellow. Is the streamer planning to broadcast a fight between demons in real time? Shimon Yin, I hope not. Otherwise, the entire streaming room will become vulgar. Li Wushuang, I don't think so. The streamer has her principles. What was Jiang Pingji doing now? She wasn't paying attention to the bullet screen in her own streaming room. She was looking at the bullet screen in Huan Er's streaming room. Did anyone know why she was able to discover Huan Er's true identity every time? With such a big screen in the streaming room, if she couldn't figure it out, wouldn't she be blind? Of course, even if the other party turned off the streaming room, Jiang Pengji would still be able to discover it immediately. After all, she had left a spiritual seal in Huan Er's body. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to get close to her without anyone noticing. Feng Zhen was able to enjoy such good luck with women mostly thanks to the audience in Huan Er's streaming room. If it weren't for the audience's generous spending, missions, and rewards, encouraging Huan Er to broadcast the fight between her and Feng Zhen, Huan Er might not have taken the initiative to do so. Not long after, Huan Er's clothes were half taken off, revealing her long, slender legs. Her shoulders were exposed to the air, and her clothes were in a mess. Lang Jun, take a concubine. Her hoarse voice was filled with lust. Even Feng Zhen felt his bones go weak when he heard this. It's still early, Feng Zhen stuttered, trying to stall for time. He didn't know that the bullet screen in Huan Er's streaming room was already filled with curses. Such a lively beauty with her clothes half taken off in front of him. No matter what kind of man he was, would he be able to hold himself back? He would have already pounced on her and ripped off the clothes that were in the way, and the two of them would have sexed together. Feng Zhen, on the other hand, was still stuttering and stalling at this juncture. He was clearly a eunuch who couldn't handle sex. Feng Zhen, who was suspected of being a eunuch, had no words to express his bitterness. His lord watched coldly from the side. Under such circumstances, he was still able to mobilize his troops. He admired him for being a real man. In the end, he could only use his strength to push the woman in his arms away. Huan wasn't prepared and was really pushed away. She rolled on the ground twice. My lord, stop watching the show. Help! Feng Zhen pushed her away, turned around, and ran towards the door. The audience in the streaming room was stunned. What happened? Huan was also stunned for a while, but she quickly reacted. Her face turned cold. who was Feng Zhen's lord. Lu Shi. Lu Shi had actually followed her. Huan Er's eyes were filled with hatred. She stared coldly at the servant not far away. Feng Zhen was hiding behind the servant. "You're here to ruin my plans again." Jiang Pengji crossed her arms and said, "I can't let my most important subordinate be tormented by you. I can only follow you to watch the show." When Feng Zhen heard this, he felt that something was amiss. "My lord, you know this person?" Jiang Pengji said, "During the Sun Assembly, I used the ceremonial tablet to dismember the guy in front of you." Chapter 771. How could his face not turn green? How could a person who had been dismembered by his lord appear here as a prostitute in a brothel? It was like a ghost story. Is this woman a ghost? Feng Zhen recalled the encounter just now and felt goosebumps all over his body. She's a living person, but she has some ghostly abilities. Even after death, she can come back to life. Why are you so afraid? What did she mean by, even after death, she can come back to life? Coming back to life was already strange enough, let alone coming back to life after being dismembered. Feng Zhen didn't know what to say. His lord was so tough, but he was different. He was a coward. "My lord, you're such a good lord." "My lord, you must be joking. I'm just a mortal. How could I not be afraid?" He had lived for almost 30 years, and this was his first time seeing a demon. It was already a miracle that he didn't lose his soul in fear. "You're afraid too?" "I really can't tell. If it weren't for me keeping an eye on you, perhaps you would have already fallen in love with her and forgotten yourself." Jiang Pengji stared at Huaner's movements as she teased Feng Zhen. His face looked like it had been painted green. Thinking about that demon begging in his arms, Feng Zhen felt his stomach churn and he almost vomited. On the other side, Huaner glared at Jiang Pengji with hatred in her eyes. "Lu Shi, one day I will tear you to pieces." Jiang Pengji chuckled. "You said, one day, but it won't be today." Faced with such mockery, Huaner's face turned green. Her previous 3 experiences told her that Jiang Pengji's combat ability was terrifying. She had no chance of escaping. Should she use the death escape again? The pain before death surfaced in her mind, and her body subconsciously shivered. If not for the system's insistence, she wouldn't even want to appear in front of Jiang Pengji. She asked the system with a guarded expression, but her heart trembled. "System, give me an idea. Do you want me to die?" The system wanted to play dead and not answer, but it reluctantly said, "Lu Shi is strong, but Feng Zhen is different. If death is certain, you can consider using Feng Zhen to restrain Lu Shi. If that doesn't work, you can still put the level 9 loyalty talisman into Feng Zhen's body." The rank 9 loyalty talisman only costs 25 million popularity points, but you'll need 1 billion or more to revive once. Every time she revived, she would need to borrow at least 100,000 popularity points. That was enough for her to buy 40 grade 9 loyalty talismans. Thinking of this debt, Lady Huan Er's face turned ashen. She had died several times before because of the high price of the 9th grade loyalty talisman. Instead, she had paid the price of death. If he had known this earlier, he would have used a few more 9th grade loyalty talismans. Perhaps the situation would have been much better than it was now. "What is this?" Jiang Pengji frowned. She noticed that there was a strange layer of mental energy in Huan Er's hands. "I'll make you the most obedient lackey." For safety reasons, she even bought a few life substitution puppet cards from a system. This thing was very useful. If it weren't for the help of the life substitution puppet card, she would have been assassinated by Xie Qian. As she finished speaking, Huaner didn't care that her clothes were half undone. In a flash, she approached Jiang Pengji. Under Feng Zhen's horrified gaze, Huaner's 10 fingernails eerily elongated until they were 3 inches long. They were silvery white and extremely sharp. With a wave of her hand, 10 silvery white shadows were left in the air. The sight of them made people tremble and panic. Jiang Pengji was already familiar with her routine. She was about to kill him, but the attack that was supposed to land on a fatal spot deviated strangely. Huaner's heart went cold. Jiang Pengji had crushed a life substitution puppet with her bare hands. The system instructed in her mind, draw Lu Shi's attention away first, then focus on Feng Zhen. He won't be able to react in time. Huan cursed under her breath. She knew what to do. What was the point of the system's advice now? Feng Zhen secretly wiped his sweat as he retreated from the battlefield. He could tell that if he continued to stay there, he would only cause trouble for his lord. It was better to leave so that she wouldn't have to restrain herself. Seeing that the last life substitution puppet had been destroyed, Huan suddenly twisted her body. She was supposed to be charging at Jiang Pengji, but now she was charging at Feng Zhen. Her movements were as swift as lightning. Jiang Pengji had anticipated this. She moved in front of her and blocked the attack. Unexpectedly, the attack didn't hurt. Her right arm was just a little numb. Jiang Pengji wasn't the only one who was shocked. Huan Er's expression changed from shock to ecstasy. But her joy didn't last long. Her left chest was pierced through by a hand from front to back. Her eyes quickly dimmed. Feng Zhen scrambled to his feet. My lord, bring the lamp over. Feng Zhen did as he was told. He fetched the undamaged candle and handed it to Jiang Pengji. He watched helplessly as his lord dripped oil on the corpse, covered it with a few flammable cloths, poured oil on the cloths, and finally lit them on fire. Was this the rhythm of burning the corpse? This demon is completely dead. The last time we dismembered her body, someone even fed her body to the wolves. Not even her bones were left, but didn't she come back to life in the end? Feng Zhen shuddered when he heard this. Let's go back first. I'll tell you in detail later. Seeing that the corpse was already burning, Jiang Pengji carried Feng Zhen and jumped down from the second floor through the window. She picked a quiet room. Just now, that demon seemed to have hit my lord's arm with something. Feng Zhen recalled Huan Er's words about turning you into the most obedient dog. He felt a little uneasy. I was indeed hit. That thing should be a spiritual mark that can forcibly control a person's soul. You won't understand even if I tell you. All you need to know is that once you're hit by it, you'll become an obedient puppet. TSK, it looks so ugly. Jiang Pengji pulled up the sleeve of her right arm. There was a large, strange, black mark on her fair arm. My lord, Jiang Pengji snickered. I got hit on purpose. Why are you panicking? When she finished speaking, the black mark on Jiang Pengji's arm seemed to come to life. It scrambled to the back of her hand and palm. Inexplicably, Feng Zhen felt a sense of pitifulness. On purpose? Including this time, I've killed her 4 times. The demon's target is me, but she's too stupid and fell into my hands 4 times in a row. Now she's become smarter and knows to target the people around me. I can guarantee that she can't hurt me, but I can't guarantee that she won't seize the opportunity to hurt the people around me. I've stopped playing with this thing a long time ago. I can't believe she still treats it like a treasure. Feng Zhen fell silent. Even so, it's not enough for my lord to personally take the risk. Jiang Pengji lifted her eyelids lazily. Only when I fall for it will she continue to target me and attack for the 5th time. If she returns without success this time, she'll only go into hiding and plot something else. This time it's you. Who will be next time? I can defend myself once, but I can't defend myself a 2nd or 3rd time. Rather than that, it's better for her to continue targeting me and kill me every time she attacks. There was one more thing she didn't say. Not only was she worried that the time traveler would target her subordinates, but she was even more worried that the time traveler would hide away. Chapter 772. Feng Zhen knew that he couldn't change Jiang Pengji's mind, so he said helplessly, I've heard that demons are also a type of living creature. She's targeted you multiple times. Perhaps there's some kind of entanglement that no one else knows about. My lord, should we send someone to investigate so that we can learn more about ourselves and our enemy? Jiang Pengji tore off a piece of cloth and wrapped it around her right hand to hide the black marks. As she wrapped it around her hand, she said, There's no need. It's just a ghost. Why would we need to mobilize so many people? It's not like I have too much time on my hands to waste my energy on investigating someone like this. If she's not afraid of death, she can come at us. I guarantee that she won't be able to return. Her time was precious. It was already good enough that she could spare some time to deal with the transmigrated woman. How could she possibly spare any time to deal with her? If the transmigrated woman continued to work hard, she would be in the mood to keep her company. Feng Zhen laughed bitterly. His lord's combat ability was already comparable to that of a ghost. Ordinary warriors could only look up to her. If we leave just like that, what should we do with that demon's corpse? Feng Zhen frowned when he heard the commotion coming from the second floor. Most of the houses were made of wood. If the demon's corpse was allowed to burn, the entire building might be affected. Jiang Pengji's answer dispelled his worries. It's fine. My opponent and I are fighting already. Someone outside heard the commotion and rushed over. Furthermore, that person's corpse was placed in an open space. The fire won't spread for a while, so it won't be a big deal. Just as Jiang Pengji predicted, people quickly came in with basins of water and drenched the entire room. When the fire was extinguished, they finally found a skeleton from the messy scene of the fire. Seeing the charred skeleton lying on the ground, the group carefully examined the black accessories beside the body. They confirmed that the person who was burned was Huan Er, and they were all horrified. Tonight was supposed to be the wedding night of a beautiful couple. How could a fire break out without a sound and burn such a beautiful woman to death? In an instant, the entire brothel was filled with an aura of fear. Everyone was panicking. Report to the authorities. Report to the authorities right now. Someone's dead. Who exactly caused the death of Huan Er's wife? How utterly devoid of conscience. Beautiful women are unfortunate. I don't know which bastard would be so ruthless to even lay his hands on such a peerless beauty. The sounds of discussion continued. The onlookers gathered outside the boudoir and craned their necks to look inside. They could barely see the messy scene after the fire. It was a horrifying sight. Many of the guests recalled Lady Huan Er's heavenly beauty and sighed inwardly. If Lady Huan Er had chosen them as her husband tonight, they would not have mistreated her, nor would they have allowed her to die. However, no matter how much of a pity they felt, such a peerless beauty had already perished beyond the heavens and would be hard to find again. They all agreed that Huan Er's husband, Feng Zhen, had killed her. No matter how hard the crowd searched, it was as if Feng Zhen and his group had vanished from the face of the earth. At this time, a strange cold wind blew in the brothel, causing everyone's clothes to flutter, and they almost couldn't open their eyes. Ah, monster! Monster! There's a monster! A shrill and terrified scream came from the second floor. The brothel keeper ran over with her thugs, and when she saw clearly, she was so shocked that she fell to the ground. The skeleton that had been burnt to a pitch-black skeleton actually stood up shakily. The dirty color faded from the pitch-black bones and was quickly replaced by clean, bright red muscles and nerves. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the dried corpse actually recovered its flesh and blood. Its skin was transparent, and the flowing blood vessels and beating heart could be seen clearly with the naked eye. After another breath's time, the transparent skin became tender and snow-white again. Before the crowd could recover from their shock, the corpse had turned from a skeleton into a living, naked beauty. Her hair was as black as a cloud, and other than her hair, eyelashes, and eyebrows, her body was completely bare. Not a single strand of hair could be seen on her body. Her skin was white and translucent, like a beautiful piece of jade. She was so gentle and delicate that people couldn't bear to put their hands on her. Unfortunately, in the face of such a heavenly beauty, the onlookers who witnessed the entire process couldn't muster up any romantic thoughts. Monster! Someone took a few steps back in fear and then sat on the ground on his butt. A foul smell came from his crotch, and the wet urine was everywhere. Suddenly, the monster opened her eyes. The crowd didn't dare to look her in the eye and started to run away in a panic. Those who didn't run were mostly too scared to run. Seeing this, the monster sneered coldly, "Cowards!" With a wave of her hand, she tore off the tattered cloth that hadn't been completely burnt and used it to cover her private parts. Then, she jumped through the window and disappeared. Monster! Monster! Seeing this, the brothel keeper was so scared that her eyes rolled back, and she fainted. On the other side, the time traveler who was mistaken by the crowd as the monster hid in a safe place and changed into a red dress. She asked the system excitedly in her mind, "Did Lucy really get hit by the level 9 loyalty talisman?" The system suppressed its excitement and replied, reporting to the host, "Lucy was indeed hit by the level 9 loyalty talisman, and the talisman has already taken effect." Once again, the time traveler received a positive answer, and her heart was in turmoil. She had no choice but to be excited. She had fallen into Jiang Pengji's hands so many times, and this time, she had finally made a comeback. She was in such a good mood that she didn't even feel bad about the debt of $2 billion. Jiang Pengji had burned her body, and if the system wanted to repair this body, it would have to pay more popularity points. The system was a profiteer who demanded an exorbitant price of $2 billion, and the time traveler could only pinch her nose and accept it. If it was in the past, she would have exploded in anger. But now, she had never felt so happy in her life. Even the profiteer, the system, found her pleasing to the eye. Jiang Pengji was hit by the level 9 loyalty talisman, and she would become the most obedient puppet and lackey. She would no longer be a hindrance to them. "I'll go find Lucy now." The time traveler secretly gritted her teeth, and her eyes were filled with malice. "Not now, it'll take some time." The system stopped her, lest the time traveler girl court death again. The system explained, the level 9 loyalty talisman invades a person's brain on a spiritual level. The stronger the person's spirit is, the greater the resistance. Lucy's spirit is very strong, and he's not easy to control. We'll wait for a while, and when the level 9 loyalty talisman has the upper hand, then we'll make our move. If we appear now, it's hard to guarantee that Lucy won't play dirty, such as harming you while you're still conscious. After listening to the system's explanation, the time traveler finally suppressed her restless heart. She said, "All right, a little impatience spoils great plans. I'll bear with it." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.